On the coldest Christmas Eve Boston had seen in decades, a deaf woman sat alone in a crowded mall food court, tears streaming down her face as families celebrated around her, completely invisible to a world that moved too fast to notice her silence. She had been abandoned by her own blood, left to spend the holiday with nothing but memories of rejection. But across that crowded space, a 7-year-old girl with knowing eyes would tug her father's sleeve and whisper words that would change 3 lives forever. "Daddy, she signs like Emma. She's crying. We have to help her." Stay with me until the end of this story and comment which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey of hope has traveled. The fluorescent lights of the Prudential Center Mall buzzed with that particular intensity that comes on Christmas Eve, when every store is bursting with last-minute shoppers and the air itself seems electrified with desperate holiday cheer. Tinny Christmas carols echoed through the corridors, punctuated by the squeals of children and the harried calls of parents trying to corral their excitement. The food court on the 3rd floor was a chaos of humanity. Families clustered around tables laden with mall Chinese food and pizza slices. Teenagers lounging with oversized drinks, elderly couples sharing cinnamon rolls and quiet conversation. And in the middle of it all, at a small table near the window overlooking Boylston Street, sat Serena Vale. She was 27 years old, dressed in a deep burgundy sweater that her mother had given her 3 Christmases ago, back when there was still hope, still the pretense of normalcy. Her dark hair fell in careful waves around her shoulders, and she'd even put on makeup that morning, that armor of normalcy that hearing people seemed to expect. Red lipstick, mascara, the costume of someone who belonged. But Serena didn't belong. Not here, not anywhere. Her phone lay face up on the table beside an untouched cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The screen was dark now, but she kept staring at it anyway, as if the sheer force of her gaze might make it light up with a different message than the one that had arrived 2 hours ago. "Serena, I'm so sorry, but we're not going to be able to do Christmas dinner this year. Mom's not feeling well, and with everything that's been going on, we just think it's better if we keep it small. Just immediate family. You understand? We'll catch up after the holidays. Merry Christmas. Marissa." Just immediate family. The words had hit her like a physical blow, even though she'd been expecting them, bracing for them, hoping against hope that this year would be different, that 13 years after losing her hearing, her family might finally see her as something other than an embarrassment, a burden, a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. Serena's hands trembled as she wrapped them around the coffee cup, seeking warmth she couldn't feel through the cardboard sleeve. Around her, the food court pulsed with sound she couldn't hear: laughter, arguments, the crash of trays, the endless loop of Jingle Bell Rock. She existed in the center of all that noise like a ghost, invisible and untouchable. She'd been 14 when bacterial meningitis had stolen her hearing over the course of 3 terrible weeks. One day, she'd been a normal teenage girl, arguing with her sister about borrowed clothes and obsessing over whether Jake Morrison from her algebra class knew she existed. The next, she was fighting for her life in a hospital bed, her temperature spiking to 105, her mother's face a mask of terror above her. She'd survived. But the girl she'd been had died in that hospital room. Her parents had tried, in their way. They'd learned basic signs: good morning, how are you, I love you. The kind of vocabulary that looked good on paper but meant nothing in the face of real conversation. Her father, a corporate lawyer who'd built his career on the power of his voice, had gradually stopped talking to her at all. It was easier, she supposed, than dealing with the frustration of communication that required patience and presence. Her mother had cried. A lot. As if Serena's deafness was a death she was meant to mourn publicly, a tragedy that had happened to her rather than to her daughter. And Marissa, beautiful, perfect Marissa, 3 years older and golden in every way Serena wasn't, had simply moved on. She'd graduated college, gotten engaged, built a life that had less and less room for a sister who required accommodation, who made family gatherings complicated, who reminded everyone, just by existing, that bad things could happen to people who didn't deserve them. The text message had been the final confirmation of what Serena had known for years. She was no longer part of the family equation. She was the variable they were trying to eliminate. A tear slid down her cheek, and she brushed it away quickly, glancing around to see if anyone had noticed. But of course no one had. In a crowd of hundreds, she was completely alone. She pulled out her sketchbook, the one constant companion that never asked her to be different than she was. Serena had been drawing since she was 5 years old, but after she lost her hearing, art had become more than a hobby. It had become her voice. The illustrations she created for children's books told stories that didn't require sound, captured emotions that transcended language. Her pencil moved across the page almost without conscious thought, sketching the scene before her. A family of 4 at the table 10 feet away, 2 young boys sticky with ice cream, parents leaning toward each other in that easy intimacy of long partnership. She drew them in loose, expressive lines, capturing the joy she couldn't be part of. She was so focused on the drawing that she didn't notice the little girl watching her. Lucy Brand was 7 years old, small for her age, with dark curls that refused to be tamed and eyes that seemed to see everything. She stood beside her father at the Orange Julius counter waiting for their order, but her attention had snagged on the woman by the window, the pretty lady who was crying while she drew. "Daddy!" Lucy tugged on Ethan's jacket sleeve insistently. Ethan Brand looked down at his daughter with the particular expression of patient exhaustion that belongs exclusively to single parents managing the chaos of holiday shopping. He was 35, tall and lean, with the kind of face that wore stress like a permanent accessory. Not quite handsome, but striking in its intensity. Dark hair graying prematurely at the temples. Blue eyes that crinkled at the corners from smiling through difficult years. "What is it, Luce? Our smoothies are almost ready." "That lady over there." Lucy pointed, and Ethan instinctively moved her hand down. He'd taught her pointing was rude, but followed her gaze anyway. "She's sad. Really, really sad." Ethan saw her then, the young woman in the burgundy sweater sitting alone, tears running down her face while her hand moved across a sketchbook. His first instinct was to look away. It was Christmas Eve. Everyone was dealing with something. It wasn't his business. But Lucy was pulling on his sleeve again, more urgently now. "Daddy, look at her hands. When she's not drawing, look at her hands." Ethan watched. The woman had set down her pencil and was staring at her phone with an expression of such profound hurt that it made his chest tighten. And her hands were moving in small, unconscious gestures. Signs. Understanding clicked into place. "She's deaf," Lucy whispered, and there was something like wonder in her voice. "She signs like Emma at school. Daddy, she's all alone on Christmas Eve, and she's crying." Emma was Lucy's best friend, a profoundly deaf girl in her second-grade class. Ethan had learned ASL 2 years ago, so Lucy could communicate with Emma, and his daughter had taken to it with the fluid ease of childhood, becoming completely conversational, while Ethan still struggled with complex grammar. Lucy's world included Emma so naturally that she'd begun to notice deaf people everywhere, in stores, on the subway, in crowds. And she'd begun to notice how often they were ignored. "Lucy, honey, we can't just—" "Please, Daddy." Lucy's eyes were filling with tears now, that empathy that sometimes overwhelmed her small body. "It's Christmas Eve. Nobody should be alone and sad on Christmas Eve. Nobody." Ethan's heart twisted. Lucy's mother had died when she was 3, a brain aneurysm that struck without warning and took her in less than 24 hours. For years, Christmas had been their hardest season, the time when Lucy's missing mother felt most present in her absence. They'd built their own traditions, just the 2 of them, but Ethan knew his daughter understood loneliness in a way most 7-year-olds didn't. "Sir, your order?" The teenager behind the counter was holding out 2 smoothies with an expression of impatience. Ethan took them automatically, his mind already moving through scenarios. They couldn't just walk up to a stranger who was clearly in distress. It would be intrusive, inappropriate. She probably wanted to be left alone. But Lucy was already moving, her small hand wrapping around his with determination, pulling him toward the table by the window. "Lucy, wait!" His daughter ignored him, navigating through the crowd with the confidence of a child on a mission. They were 10 feet away, 5 feet. And then Lucy was standing directly in front of the woman's table, looking up at her with those enormous, earnest eyes. Serena felt the change in light and looked up from her sketchbook, startled to find a little girl standing there, staring at her with an intensity that was almost unsettling. Behind the child stood a tall man holding 2 smoothies and wearing an expression of apology mixed with resignation. Serena's breath caught. This was the part she hated most, the awkward interaction when hearing people noticed her tears and felt obligated to check if she was okay. She'd learned to smile and nod and send them away as quickly as possible to minimize the discomfort for everyone involved. But before she could arrange her face into that practiced expression, the little girl's hands began to move. She was signing. Slowly, with the careful deliberation of someone still learning, but clearly, definitively. "Are you okay?" Serena's heart stopped, then started again. Too fast, too hard. The man behind the little girl, her father, clearly, set down the smoothies and lifted his own hands. His signing was more fluent, more confident, though still carrying that slight stiffness of someone who'd learned ASL as an adult rather than absorbing it from birth. "I'm sorry to bother you. My daughter noticed you seemed upset. We wanted to make sure you're all right." Something in Serena's chest cracked open. It had been months, actual months, since anyone had spoken to her in her own language. Her few deaf friends had scattered after college, building lives in other cities. The online communities she belonged to provided connection, but not this, not the immediate visceral experience of being seen, being spoken to, being treated as a person whose communication was worthy of meeting halfway. Her hands trembled as she lifted them to respond. I'm fine. Thank you for asking." The little girl, she couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, frowned with the particular skepticism of children who haven't yet learned to accept polite lies. "You're crying," she signed, and then paused, searching for words. She fingerspelled something. "SAD. You are sad." "Lucy," the man signed and spoke simultaneously, clearly a habit from raising a hearing child. "We should give her space." But Lucy shook her head stubbornly and looked back at Serena. "It's Christmas Eve. Are you spending it alone?" The directness of the question, the absolute lack of judgment in the child's face, demolished the last of Serena's defenses. Fresh tears spilled over, and she nodded, not trusting herself to sign. "That's not right," Lucy signed with increasing passion, her small hands moving emphatically. "Nobody should be alone on Christmas. Daddy, tell her she shouldn't be alone." Ethan's face softened with something that looked like understanding mixed with his own old grief. He pulled out the chair across from Serena, waiting for her nod of permission before sitting down, and his daughter immediately climbed into the seat beside him. "My name is Ethan," he signed carefully. "This is Lucy. We don't mean to intrude, but my daughter has a very strong sense of justice about holidays and loneliness." Despite everything, Serena felt the corner of her mouth twitch upward. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to pull herself together. "I'm Serena," she signed back, "and I appreciate your kindness, but really, I'm okay." "You're a liar," Lucy signed cheerfully, with the brutal honesty of childhood. "But that's okay. Sometimes people lie because they're embarrassed or hurt. My daddy says that's called dignity." Ethan's face flushed slightly. "Lucy, that's—" But Serena was laughing now, a sound she couldn't hear but could feel in her chest, shaking loose some of the tightness that had been crushing her all day. "Your daughter is very wise," she signed to Ethan, then turned to Lucy. "You're right. I was lying. I'm not okay, but I will be." "Why are you alone?" Lucy asked, tilting her head with curiosity. "Where is your family?" The question landed like a blow, but Serena forced herself to answer honestly. There was something about this child's directness, this man's gentle presence, that made lying feel impossible. "They canceled our dinner plans. They said it was because my mother wasn't feeling well, but really, they just don't want me there." She'd never said it out loud, or in signs, before. Never let herself acknowledge the truth so baldly. But as soon as her hands formed the words, she knew they were right. Lucy's face crumpled with indignation. "That's mean. Why would they do that?" "Because I'm deaf," Serena signed simply. "And my family doesn't know how to deal with that. It makes them uncomfortable. So it's easier if I just don't exist." Ethan's jaw tightened. He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand, asking permission with his eyes. When Serena nodded, he gently tapped her wrist to get her attention before signing. "I'm sorry. That's not family. That's cruelty." The validation hit her like a wave. She'd spent 13 years making excuses for her family, telling herself she was being too sensitive. that she needed to try harder to accommodate them. But this stranger, this man who'd known her for 5 minutes, had just named it for what it was: cruelty. "Do you have plans?" Lucy signed suddenly. "For tonight? For tomorrow?" Serena shook her head. "No, I thought I did, but no." Lucy looked at her father with an expression of determination that Ethan recognized immediately. It was the same look she got when she'd decided something was wrong and needed to be fixed. Like the time she'd seen a homeless man in the cold and insisted they bring him their extra blankets, or when she'd organized her entire second-grade class to write letters to elderly people in nursing homes. His daughter had inherited her mother's enormous heart, and sometimes it terrified him. "Then you should come with us," Lucy signed decisively. "Lucy," Ethan started, but his daughter talked over him. "We're going to get hot chocolate and go home and decorate our Christmas tree. We haven't done it yet because Daddy works too much, and we've been busy. But we're doing it tonight, and you should come help us. You can't be alone on Christmas Eve. That's a rule." Serena stared at the child, then at her father, completely overwhelmed. "That's very kind, but I couldn't impose." "It's not imposing if we invite you," Lucy signed matter-of-factly. "That's what Daddy always tells people when they say they don't want to be a burden. He says nobody is a burden if they're wanted." Ethan had the grace to look embarrassed at having his own parenting philosophy quoted back at him. But as he looked at Serena, really looked at her, seeing the loneliness and hurt that went so much deeper than one canceled dinner, he found himself nodding. "She's right," he signed. "If you have nowhere else to be, you're welcome to spend the evening with us. No pressure, no expectations, just company. So you don't have to be alone." Serena's throat tightened. She wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain her dignity, her independence, all the careful walls she'd built around herself over the years. Accepting charity from strangers felt like admitting defeat. But God, she was so tired of being alone. "Are you sure?" she signed hesitantly. "You don't even know me." "Neither do the people who abandoned you tonight," Ethan signed back gently. "But they should have known better. We're just offering what anyone deserves on Christmas Eve: kindness." Lucy bounced in her seat, reading Serena's hesitation as potential agreement. "Please say yes. I want to show you my room and my drawings. Daddy says you're an artist. I can tell from your sketchbook. And we have so many ornaments, and it's much better with 3 people because Daddy always puts the star on crooked and won't admit it." "I do not put it on crooked," Ethan signed with mock offense, and Lucy giggled. The sound clearly delighted, though Serena couldn't hear it. Serena looked down at her cold coffee, her abandoned sketchbook, the phone that hadn't buzzed with a follow-up message or an apology or any indication that her family had second thoughts about their decision. Then she looked up at these 2 strangers, this man with kind eyes and his impossibly empathetic daughter, and felt something shift inside her chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. "Okay," she signed, almost surprising herself with the decision. "Yes, I'll come with you. Thank you." Lucy let out a whoop of joy that made several nearby families turn to stare, and before Serena knew what was happening, the little girl had run around the table and thrown her arms around her in an enthusiastic hug. Serena froze for a moment. Physical affection from her own family had become rare enough that she'd almost forgotten what it felt like. And then slowly, carefully, she hugged the child back. When Lucy pulled away, she was grinning. "This is going to be the best Christmas ever. You'll see." Ethan stood and began gathering the smoothies, and Serena collected her sketchbook and coat with hands that had stopped trembling. As she slid her phone into her purse, she glanced one more time at her sister's message. Just immediate family. She'd spent her whole life trying to earn a place in that category. But maybe family wasn't something you were born into. Maybe it was something you chose. Something that chose you back. As they made their way toward the mall exit, Lucy's small hand slipped into Serena's with complete trust, and Ethan walked on her other side, turning back occasionally to sign something about the weather or ask if she needed anything. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Serena didn't feel invisible. They were halfway to the parking garage when the lights went out. One moment, the mall was a blaze of Christmas lights and fluorescent brilliance. The next, they were plunged into complete darkness. Emergency lights kicked on after a few seconds, casting everything in an eerie red glow. But the sudden change sent a ripple of panic through the crowd. People shouted. Serena couldn't hear them, but could see the movement, the bodies surging in different directions, the chaos of confusion and fear. Store alarms began to wail, completely silent to her, but visible in the flashing lights and the way people covered their ears. And in that moment, Serena's old trauma rose up like a tidal wave. She was 14 again, lying in a hospital bed, unable to hear the doctors or understand what was happening to her body. She was standing at her high school graduation, watching mouths move in speeches she couldn't follow, feeling utterly lost. She was at her grandmother's funeral, unable to hear the eulogy or the prayers, isolated in her grief. In darkness, deaf people lose everything. Sound becomes navigation, warning, communication. In darkness, Serena was completely, terrifyingly alone. Her breathing came faster, too fast. The edges of her vision started to blur. Panic attack. She knew the signs, but knowing didn't help. She couldn't hear announcements about what was happening, couldn't follow the crowd because she didn't know where they were going or why. A hand gripped her arm firmly but gently. She flinched, then looked up. Ethan had positioned himself directly in her line of sight, his face illuminated by the red emergency lights. His expression was calm, grounding. He raised his hands slowly, deliberately, making sure she could see them clearly despite the poor lighting. "I'm here," he signed, each word precise and visible. "You're not alone. I won't leave you. Do you trust me?" Serena's heart was pounding, her chest tight, but she focused on his face, on the steadiness there, the absolute certainty in his eyes, and managed to nod. "Good," he signed. "We're going to walk to the parking garage together. Lucy will hold your right hand. I'll be on your left. We'll go slowly. If you need to stop, squeeze Lucy's hand and we stop, okay?" Another nod. She felt Lucy's small fingers wrap around her right hand, and then Ethan's larger hand closed gently around her left. They formed a chain, the three of them, and began to move through the panicked crowd. Ethan navigated with the confidence of someone who'd learned to be hyper-aware of his surroundings. A single parent's vigilance translated into crisis management. He kept his body slightly in front of Serena's, running interference when people pushed too close. He turned back every few steps to make eye contact, to make sure she was okay. Lucy, impossibly, was signing one-handed as they walked, her small fingers forming words like "almost there" and "you're doing great" and "don't be scared." They reached the parking garage just as Serena's breathing started to even out. Ethan pulled out his keys with one hand, never letting go of her with the other, and led them to an older model Honda Accord parked on level 3. "Wait here 1 second," he signed, then physically moved Serena to lean against the car before unlocking it and starting the engine. Heat began to pour from the vents immediately. Lucy climbed into the back seat, and Ethan opened the passenger door for Serena with old-fashioned courtesy that felt almost foreign after years of people treating her as an afterthought. She slid into the seat, her heart still racing but her breathing steadier now. Through the windshield, she could see other people emerging from the mall, looking confused and irritated, but not truly frightened. For them, it had been an inconvenience. For her, it had been a reminder of how precarious her place in the hearing world really was. Ethan got into the driver's seat and turned to face her before putting the car in gear. In the dim light of the parking garage, his face was serious. "Are you okay?" he signed. "I am now," she answered honestly. "Thank you for not leaving me." "Never," he signed simply, and then pulled out of the parking space. They'd made it to the exit ramp when the car hit a patch of black ice and began to slide. Serena felt the sudden change in momentum, the sickening sideways slip, and her hands flew out to brace against the dashboard. Ethan didn't panic. His face was concentrated, his hands steady on the wheel as he turned into the skid. But the car continued sliding, heading directly for the concrete barrier. They stopped 3 inches from impact, the car's front bumper kissing the wall with barely a tap. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Ethan put the car in park with shaking hands and looked back at Lucy, who was wide-eyed but unhurt in her booster seat. He checked Serena next, his eyes scanning for any sign of injury. "Everyone okay?" 2 nods. Ethan let out a long breath and signed, "Well, this night keeps getting more interesting." They couldn't stay there. The exit ramp was already backing up with cars behind them, horns honking in irritation. Ethan got out to assess the minimal damage, then carefully drove the rest of the way out of the garage, taking side streets instead of the highway. The snow was falling heavily now, the kind of thick, wet flakes that made Boston look like a Christmas card and driving like a nightmare. Traffic was snarled everywhere, brake lights glowing red through the white curtain. What should have been a 20-minute drive took nearly an hour. Lucy fell asleep in the back seat halfway through, her curls pressed against the window. Serena sat in the passenger seat, watching the city roll by in muffled silence, feeling the strange surreality of the evening settle over her. 12 hours ago, she'd been in her studio apartment, getting ready for Christmas Eve dinner with her family, still believing that maybe this year would be different. Now she was in a stranger's car, having narrowly avoided 2 different disasters, heading to a place she'd never been with people she'd just met. It should have felt terrifying, but all she felt was a strange, fragile sense of safety. Ethan glanced over at her occasionally, and once, when they were stopped at a red light, he raised one hand from the wheel to sign, "Still doing okay?" She nodded and signed back, "Thank you for this. For all of it." He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him, and it transformed his tired face into something approaching handsome. "Lucy would never forgive me if I let you spend Christmas Eve alone. And honestly, neither would I." The light changed and they drove on through the snow. Ethan's apartment was in a modest building in Somerville, the kind of working-class neighborhood where teachers and nurses and single fathers on nonprofit salaries could still afford to live. He carried sleeping Lucy inside first, settling her in her bed without waking her, then came back to help Serena with her coat. The apartment was small, living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, but it radiated warmth. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. Books overflowed from shelves in the living room. A half-decorated Christmas tree stood in the corner, its lights unplugged, ornaments stacked in boxes beside it. This was a home, not a house. A home. "Welcome," Ethan signed, looking suddenly self-conscious. "It's not much, but it's warm and dry, which feels like a win after that drive." "It's perfect," Serena signed back, meaning it. Ethan moved into the kitchen, and Serena watched through the pass-through as he filled a kettle and pulled down mugs. When he came back to the living room, he had a notepad and pen along with the hot chocolate. He wrote, "Signing is great, but my hands are cold and clumsy from driving. Mind if we write for a bit?" Serena took the notepad gratefully. "Not at all. Thank you for making this so easy." "You make it easy," he wrote back. "Can I ask you something?" "Personal." "You can say no." "Okay." "The panic attack in the mall. Has that happened before?" Serena hesitated, then wrote honestly, "Yes. When I lost my hearing, I also lost a lot of my sense of safety in the world. Darkness especially triggers it because I lose the ability to lip read or see people signing. I feel untethered, vulnerable." Ethan read her words carefully, then wrote, "That makes complete sense. I'm sorry the world doesn't accommodate that better, and I'm sorry your family isn't there to help you feel safe." The words were so direct, so kind, that Serena felt tears threatening again. She blinked them back and wrote, "Can I ask you something now?" "Of course." "Why are you doing this?" "Really? You don't know me. You didn't have to invite me here." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, sipping his hot chocolate while he considered his answer. When he finally wrote, his handwriting was careful, deliberate. "Lucy's mother, my wife, died when Lucy was 3. Brain aneurysm. No warning, just gone. For a long time after, people were kind but distant. They didn't know what to say, so they said nothing. They didn't know what to do, so they did nothing. Lucy and I learned what it felt like to be invisible in our grief. Then one day, a woman at Lucy's preschool, another parent I barely knew, saw me sitting in my car crying in the parking lot. She knocked on the window and said, 'I'm not going to ask if you're okay because you're clearly not, but I'm going to bring you dinner tonight, and we're going to have coffee while your daughter plays with mine, and you're going to tell me what you need.' She didn't wait for permission. She just showed up, and it saved me. It saved us. So when Lucy saw you tonight and said you needed help, I don't know. Maybe I was paying it forward, Or maybe I just remembered what it felt like to be the person sitting alone, needing someone to see me. Serena read his words 3 times, her vision blurring with tears. When she finally looked up, Ethan was watching her with an expression of understanding that went beyond sympathy. "You're not alone tonight," he wrote. "And you don't have to be grateful or strong or anything except yourself. Okay?" She nodded, unable to form words or signs. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking hot chocolate while snow continued to fall outside. Eventually, Ethan stood and gestured to the Christmas tree with a questioning expression. "Want to help me finish decorating? Or is that too much togetherness?" Serena surprised herself by laughing, actually laughing, feeling it shake her chest and release some of the tightness that had been living there. She stood and joined him by the tree. They worked side by side, hanging ornaments that told the story of Lucy's short life. Baby's first Christmas, handprint decorations from preschool, store-bought globes mixed with homemade salt dough creations. Ethan would hold up each one and sign its story. Lucy made this one when she was 4, painted it all by herself, and Serena would find it the perfect spot on the tree. Somewhere around ornament number 37, a glittery snowman with mismatched button eyes, Serena realized she was smiling. Actually, genuinely smiling, not the fake version she performed for other people. When they finished, Ethan plugged in the lights and stepped back. The tree blazed to life, casting multicolored shadows across the small living room. It listed slightly to the left and had more decorations on the bottom half than the top, Lucy's reach versus adult reach. But it was beautiful in its imperfection. "Perfect," Ethan signed with obvious satisfaction. "Almost," Serena corrected, pointing to the star still sitting in its box. "You forgot the top." Ethan grimaced and signed, "I'm too short." "Usually I stand on a chair and Lucy critiques my placement from the ground." "Let me," Serena signed. She was tall, 5'9" in her bare feet, and when Ethan handed her the star, she reached up easily and settled it on the top branch. "Well?" She signed down at him. "Straight?" He tilted his head, considering, then signed with a teasing smile. "Perfectionist." "It's great." They stood there together, admiring their work, and for just a moment Serena let herself imagine this was her life. That this was her home, her tree, her family. The thought should have scared her. Instead, it felt like coming home. A sound from the hallway made them both turn. Lucy stood in her doorway, bleary-eyed and wrapped in a blanket covered with cartoon cats, signing sleepily. "Is Serena still here?" "I'm here," Serena signed back. Lucy patted across the room and climbed into Serena's lap where she sat on the couch, curling up with the unself-conscious trust of a child who'd never learned to question whether she was wanted. "Good," the little girl signed against Serena's shoulder. "I was scared it was a dream." "Not a dream," Serena signed into her hair. "I'm really here." "Will you stay for Christmas morning too?" Lucy signed, then looked up at Ethan. "Daddy, can she stay?" "Please." Ethan met Serena's eyes over his daughter's head, and something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, the beginning of something neither of them had names for yet. "If she wants to stay," he signed carefully, "she's welcome. For as long as she wants." Lucy turned to look at Serena with those enormous, hopeful eyes. "Please, I already got you a present and everything." "You did?" Serena signed, surprised. "Well, not exactly," Lucy admitted, "but I'll make you something tonight after you fall asleep. Please stay." How could anyone say no to that face, to that pure, uncomplicated desire for connection? "I'll stay," Serena signed, "if you're sure I'm not imposing." "Not imposing?" Ethan and Lucy signed simultaneously, then grinned at each other. The rest of the evening unfolded with the comfortable ease of old friends rather than new acquaintances. They made popcorn and watched Elf with subtitles on, Ethan asking Serena every few minutes if the timing was right, if she could follow the jokes. Lucy taught Serena the signs for various Christmas vocabulary she'd learned at school. Ethan told stories about Christmases past that made Lucy groan with embarrassment and Serena laugh. Around midnight, Lucy finally fell asleep between them on the couch, her head on Serena's shoulder and her feet in Ethan's lap. Ethan carefully extracted himself and scooped his daughter up, carrying her to bed. When he came back, he found Serena standing by the window, looking out at the snow-covered street below. He touched her shoulder gently to get her attention, and when she turned, his face was serious. "I meant what I said earlier," he signed. "You can stay. Not just tonight. If you need a place while you figure things out, Lucy's room has a daybed we never use, or the couch is actually pretty comfortable." "Ethan," Serena started, overwhelmed. "I know it sounds crazy," he continued. "We just met. But Lucy's right. Nobody should be alone on Christmas. And from what you've told me about your family, it sounds like you might need some time to rebuild. So, consider this a safe place to land. No pressure. No expectations." Serena's hands trembled as she signed back. "Why would you do this for me? Why would you take this risk?" Ethan thought for a moment before answering. "Because when my wife died, I learned that family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up, who sees you, who stays. Lucy sees you. I see you. And if your biological family can't manage to do the same, well, that's their loss." Something in Serena's heart, some last defensive wall, crumbled completely. "Yes," she signed. "Yes, I want to stay. Not forever. Just until I figure out what comes next." "However long that takes," Ethan signed back. They stood there in the Christmas tree lights, two broken people who'd found each other in the chaos of a mall food court, and for the first time in 13 years, Serena felt like maybe, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Outside, snow continued to fall on Christmas Eve, blanketing the city in white. Inside, Serena Vale discovered something she'd been searching for her entire life. A place where her silence wasn't something to be fixed. Where her difference wasn't a burden. Where she was seen, valued, wanted exactly as she was. As she settled onto the couch with blankets Ethan had brought from the linen closet, her phone buzzed one last time. Another text from Marissa. "Hope you understand. It's really what's best for everyone." Serena read it once, then turned off her phone and tucked it away. Tomorrow, she'd figure out how to respond, or if she even wanted to. Tomorrow, she'd start building whatever came next in her life. But tonight, wrapped in the warm cocoon of a stranger's kindness and a child's uncomplicated love, Serena simply closed her eyes and let herself feel safe. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was the Christmas tree lights dancing across the ceiling, painting patterns of hope in red and gold and green. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she slept without nightmares. Morning came with the kind of brilliant winter sunlight that only follows heavy snow, sharp and clean and almost painfully bright. Serena woke slowly, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar ceiling, the soft weight of blankets that weren't hers, the faint smell of coffee drifting from somewhere nearby. Then memory flooded back. The mall, the darkness, the slide on black ice, the Christmas tree glowing in the small living room, Lucy's small hand in hers, Ethan's steady presence guiding her through panic. She sat up carefully, folding the blankets with automatic precision, trying to leave no evidence of her presence beyond what was absolutely necessary. Old habits from years of making herself as unobtrusive as possible, of taking up as little space as she could manage. The apartment was quiet, or at least it appeared to be. Serena could never be entirely sure. She stood and padded toward the kitchen, where Ethan stood at the stove flipping pancakes with the focused concentration of someone who'd learned to cook through trial and error rather than natural talent. He must have sensed movement in his peripheral vision, because he turned and his face broke into a smile that was part relief, part genuine pleasure. "Good morning," he signed with one hand, spatula still held in the other. "Coffee?" "Please," Serena signed back, then hesitated. "I should probably go. You've already done so much, and I don't want to." Ethan set down the spatula deliberately and turned to face her fully, both hands free now. "Serena, stop. You're not imposing. Lucy will be devastated if you leave before she wakes up. Plus, I made way too many pancakes." He gestured at the tower of increasingly misshapen circles stacked on a plate. "I got ambitious." Despite herself, Serena laughed. "Those are very creative shapes." "The polite word is rustic," Ethan signed with mock dignity. "Lucy calls them Daddy's abstract art pancakes." but they taste fine, I promise. He poured her coffee, black, and she accepted it gratefully, and they stood together in the small kitchen as weak winter sunlight streamed through the window above the sink. Outside, the street was a wonderland of white, cars buried under snow, the whole city hushed and transformed. It's beautiful, Serena signed, looking out. It's going to be a nightmare to shovel, Ethan signed back pragmatically. But yes, beautiful. A small tornado of energy burst into the kitchen. Lucy, still in her cat print pajamas, hair an absolute disaster, eyes bright with Christmas morning excitement. Serena, she signed enthusiastically, then immediately grabbed Serena's hand and started pulling. You stayed, you really stayed. Come see, I made you something. Lucy, let her wake up first, Ethan signed, but he was smiling. No time, Daddy, it's Christmas. Lucy tugged Serena toward the living room, where the tree still glowed softly in the morning light. Beneath it, a small collection of wrapped presents sat alongside something that clearly hadn't been there last night, a lumpy package wrapped in newspaper and tied with yarn. Lucy picked it up reverently and thrust it toward Serena. I made it last night after you fell asleep. I know it's not fancy, but Daddy said the best gifts are the ones that come from your heart, so I made this from my heart. Serena's throat tightened as she carefully unwrapped the newspaper. Inside were a pair of cream-colored gloves, clearly hand-knitted by someone who was still learning, with uneven stitches and one finger slightly longer than the others, but made with such obvious care that they were beautiful in their imperfection. For your hands, Lucy signed solemnly, so they stay warm when you talk, because your hands are your voice, and voices should never be cold. The words hit Serena like a physical blow. In 13 years, no one in her family had ever acknowledged her hands as her voice. They'd treated her signing as an inconvenience, an accommodation they had to make, a reminder of what she'd lost rather than what she'd gained. But this 7-year-old child, who'd known her for less than 12 hours, understood something fundamental that her own parents had never grasped. Her hands weren't a substitution for speech. They were speech. They were her voice, as valid and valuable as any sound that came from a mouth. Tears spilled over before Serena could stop them. She pulled the gloves on carefully. They fit reasonably well despite the uneven knitting, and then reached for Lucy, pulling her into a fierce hug. When she pulled back, her hands were shaking as she signed, "This is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me. Thank you." Lucy beamed, then signed with the casual generosity of childhood, "You're welcome. Now you're part of our family, so you get Christmas presents. That's how it works." Lucy, Ethan signed gently, coming into the room with plates of pancakes. "We talked about this. Serena is our guest. She might have other plans, other people to see." But Serena was shaking her head before he finished signing. She looked at Lucy, then at Ethan, and signed with a conviction that surprised her. "I don't. And I would be honored to spend Christmas with you, if the invitation is still open." "It's open forever," Lucy signed emphatically. "Right, Daddy?" Ethan's expression softened into something that looked almost like wonder. "Right," he signed quietly. "Forever." They ate pancakes at the small kitchen table, abstract art and all, and Lucy kept up a running commentary and signs about her favorite ornaments on the tree, her best friend Emma's new puppy, her teacher Ms. Rodriguez, who was learning to sign so the whole class could talk to Emma. Her hands moved with the fluid enthusiasm of childhood, sometimes faster than Serena could fully follow. And when she got stuck on a sign she didn't know, she'd fingerspell it laboriously or grab her father's arm for help. It was chaotic and warm and utterly ordinary, and Serena found herself aching with how much she'd missed this. Not Christmas specifically, but the simple experience of being included, of conversation that flowed naturally, of being able to follow what was happening without constantly asking people to repeat themselves or watching them give up in frustration. After breakfast, Lucy insisted on opening presents, and Serena watched as father and daughter exchanged gifts with the comfortable ritual of a two-person family. Books for Lucy. She was reading at a 4th grade level, Ethan signed proudly. A new winter coat, a set of gel pens she'd been wanting. For Ethan, Lucy had made a mug in art class painted with wonky hearts and the words "Best Dad" in uneven letters. Ethan held it like it was made of gold, signing to his daughter, "Perfect. I'm going to use this every single day." "Even at work?" "Especially at work." They were so easy with each other, so comfortable in their love, that Serena felt like an intruder on something sacred. She started to excuse herself, to give them privacy, but Lucy grabbed her hand. "Wait, you have to open yours too." "I already did," Serena signed, holding up her gloved hands. "These are perfect." "No, no, your other present." Lucy dove under the tree and emerged with a flat package that Serena hadn't noticed before. The wrapping paper was covered in snowflakes, and a tag read simply, "Serena." She looked at Ethan questioningly, and he had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I might have grabbed something while you and Lucy were decorating last night," he signed. "I had some Amazon gift cards saved up. It's nothing big." Serena unwrapped it carefully, her heart hammering. Inside was a leather-bound sketchbook, the expensive kind with thick, textured paper that could handle watercolors and ink, and a set of professional-grade colored pencils. "I saw your drawings," Ethan signed when she looked up at him with wide eyes. "At the mall. You're incredibly talented. I don't know. I thought maybe you'd want something nice to work with, something that was just yours." Serena pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. The sketchbook alone was easily $70. The pencils another $50. This wasn't an afterthought. This was a gift chosen with attention, with the kind of care that came from actually seeing someone. "Ethan, this is too much," she signed shakily. "It's not," he signed back firmly. "And you're not allowed to argue on Christmas. Those are the rules." Lucy nodded sagely. "Rules are rules." Serena opened the sketchbook to the first pristine page and ran her fingers over the paper, feeling its texture, its possibility. Then she signed to both of them, words she'd been holding back since she woke up. "I don't know how to thank you, either of you. You've given me more in one night than my own family has given me in years." "Then they're fools," Lucy signed with the blunt honesty of childhood. "And we're lucky, because now we get you." The morning dissolved into the pleasant laziness of holiday routine. Lucy played with her new gel pens at the kitchen table, creating elaborate drawings she insisted on explaining in minute detail. Ethan washed dishes while Serena dried, the two of them falling into an easy rhythm. At one point, their hands collided, reaching for the same mug, and they both froze. The contact electric, unexpected. "Sorry," Ethan signed quickly, pulling back. "Don't be," Serena signed, and meant it. Around noon, Ethan's phone began to buzz insistently. He glanced at it, and Serena saw his expression shift from relaxed to tense in an instant. He excused himself, stepping into his bedroom and closing the door. Lucy noticed too. She climbed down from her chair and came to stand beside Serena, signing quietly. "That's probably Grandma and Grandpa. They always call on Christmas." "Your other grandparents?" Serena asked. Lucy shook her head. "Mommy's parents. They live in Florida. They want Daddy to move there so they can help with me, but Daddy says our life is here." She paused, then signed with unusual seriousness for a 7-year-old. "They don't understand why Daddy works so much. They think he should find someone to help, but Daddy says we're doing just fine on our own." Serena felt a pang of recognition, the weight of other people's expectations. The subtle message that you weren't enough, that you needed to be different, that you were failing some invisible standard. "I think you're doing more than fine," she signed to Lucy. "I think you and your daddy are doing beautifully." Lucy smiled, then her expression turned calculating, the look of a child formulating a plan. "Serena, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you going to stay with us? Like, really stay? Not just for today?" The question hung in the air between them. Serena knew the responsible answer, that she needed to go back to her own apartment, her own life, that she couldn't impose on Ethan's hospitality indefinitely. But when she opened her mouth to sign that responsible answer, different words came out. "Would you like me to stay?" "Yes," Lucy signed emphatically. "So much yes. You make everything better. You make Daddy smile more. And you understand my signs, even the ones I mess up. Plus, Emma would be so excited to meet you at school. A real deaf artist. She wants to be an artist, too." "Lucy," Serena signed carefully, "I think that's something your daddy and I need to talk about. It's a big decision." "But you want to stay," Lucy signed. Not a question, a statement. "I can tell." Before Serena could respond, Ethan emerged from the bedroom, his face carefully neutral in the way that meant he was actively working to hide strong emotion. He signed to Lucy first. "Grandma and Grandpa say Merry Christmas. They sent you a card with money. It's in the mail. Did they ask about me moving there again?" Lucy signed with the weary wisdom of a child who'd heard the same argument too many times. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "They worry about you, about us." "But we're okay," Lucy signed firmly. "Aren't we, Daddy? We're okay." "We're okay," Ethan confirmed, but something in his expression remained troubled. The afternoon passed in a comfortable haze. They watched more movies, Home Alone with subtitles, Lucy providing enthusiastic signed commentary throughout. Ethan made grilled cheese sandwiches for lunch, and Lucy insisted on showing Serena every single one of her art projects from school, which were numerous and stored in a massive folder under her bed. But underneath the domestic peace, Serena could feel something building. A tension that had nothing to do with her presence and everything to do with the phone call Ethan had received. She saw it in the way his shoulders never quite relaxed, and how he kept glancing at his phone as if expecting another call. Finally, as evening approached and Lucy was occupied building an elaborate Lego castle in her room, Serena touched Ethan's arm to get his attention. "Do you want to talk about it?" she signed. He looked at her for a long moment, clearly wrestling with something, then gestured to the small balcony off the living room. They stepped outside into the biting cold, their breath visible in the frigid air. "It's my in-laws," he signed, his movements sharp with frustration. "Lucy's grandparents. They've been pushing for months for us to move to Florida. They retired there 5 years ago, and they think Lucy needs—" He paused, searching for words. "They think she needs more stability, more family, a mother figure. But Lucy has you," Serena signed. "I know that," Ethan signed back. "But they lost their daughter. Lucy is all they have left of her. And they look at my life, the long hours at work, the small apartment, me struggling to do everything alone, and they see failure. They see a child who's missing out." "What do you see?" Serena asked. Ethan leaned against the railing, looking out at the snow-covered street below. When he signed again, his movements were slower, more thoughtful. "I see a kid who's happy, who has friends, who's learning 2 languages and getting good grades and knows she's loved. I see us building something together, just the 2 of us. It's not perfect, but it's ours." He paused. "But sometimes I wonder if they're right. If Lucy needs more than I can give her, if I'm being selfish by keeping her here." Serena stepped closer, making sure he could see her hands clearly in the fading light. "Can I tell you what I see?" she signed. "I see a father who learned an entire language so his daughter could communicate with her best friend. I see a man who noticed a stranger crying in a mall and didn't look away. I see someone who drives through snowstorms and navigates blackouts and makes terrible pancakes." Ethan huffed a laugh despite himself. "All because he wants his daughter to know she's valued. That's not failure, Ethan. That's love." He stared at her, and something shifted in his expression, something that made her heart beat faster. "How do you do that?" he signed quietly. "Do what?" "See the good in everything. Even after your own family." He stopped himself. "I'm sorry, that was inappropriate." "No," Serena signed. "You're right. My family gave up on me. But maybe that's why I can see what you're doing more clearly. Because I know what it looks like when someone doesn't try." "And Ethan?" She waited until he met her eyes. "You're trying. Every single day you're trying. Lucy knows that. I can see it in how she looks at you." They stood there in the cold for another moment, the air between them charged with something neither was quite ready to name. Then Ethan signed, "We should go back in, before we freeze." But as they turned toward the door, Serena's phone, which she'd left on the coffee table, lit up with an incoming call. Through the glass door, she could see the name on the screen. Marissa. Her sister was calling. Serena's first instinct was to ignore it, to let it go to voicemail and deal with it later, if at all. But something made her reach for the door handle, made her step inside and pick up the phone. She couldn't answer it normally. Phone calls were impossible without hearing, but she had a video relay service app that she rarely used because most people found it too cumbersome. She opened it now, hands trembling slightly, and accepted the call. A sign language interpreter appeared on screen first, their professional expression neutral. Then Marissa's face filled the frame, and Serena felt her stomach clench. Her sister looked perfect, as always, blonde hair styled in beachy waves, makeup flawless, wearing the cashmere sweater their mother had given her for her birthday. She was in their parents' house. Serena recognized the living room, with its designer furniture and carefully curated Christmas decorations. The interpreter began translating Marissa's words into sign language, and Serena felt Ethan move to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his solid presence, but not so close that he was intruding. "Serena, finally. I've been trying to reach you." Marissa's face was set in that particular expression of irritation that Serena knew so well, the one that said she was inconvenienced but trying to be patient. "It's Christmas," Serena signed back, and the interpreter voiced her words. "What do you want, Marissa?" "I want to understand why you're ignoring the family. Mom is upset. You didn't even call to wish her Merry Christmas." The audacity of the statement nearly took Serena's breath away. She signed carefully, precisely, making sure every word was clear. "You canceled our plans yesterday. You told me I wasn't immediate family, so I made other plans. That's what you wanted, isn't it?" Marissa's expression flickered, a flash of guilt quickly covered by defensiveness. "That's not fair. Mom wasn't feeling well. We didn't cancel to hurt you." "Then why did you do it?" Serena signed, and she could feel years of suppressed anger rising in her chest. "Why does it always come down to Mom not feeling well, or Dad being too busy, or you having other commitments? Why is there always a reason I can't be included?" "That's not true," Marissa said, but she wouldn't meet the camera's eyes. "We include you. We always invite you to things. And then you cancel. Or you forget to tell me plans changed. Or you have conversations at family dinners that I can't follow because nobody will slow down or face me or use the sign language you promised you'd learn." "That's not fair." Marissa's voice was rising now. Serena could see it in the interpreter's increased emphasis. "We've tried. We've really tried. But you have to understand, it's hard for us too. It's exhausting having to accommodate." "Accommodate," Serena signed, cutting her off. "That's the word you always use. Like I'm a burden you have to manage, instead of a person you're supposed to love." Lucy had emerged from her room, drawn by the commotion. She stood in the hallway, watching with wide eyes. Ethan noticed and signed to her. "It's okay. Serena is talking to her sister. Give them privacy." But Lucy shook her head and came to stand beside Serena, slipping her small hand into Serena's free one. An act of solidarity that was so pure, so uncomplicated, that Serena felt tears threatening. "Who are you with?" Marissa asked, and now her tone was different, sharp, suspicious. "Is someone there?" "I'm with friends," Serena signed. "Friends who invited me to spend Christmas with them. Friends who don't think my existence is something they have to accommodate." "Serena, come on, you're being dramatic. If you would just try a little harder to fit in." "Fit in?" Serena's hands were moving faster now, sharp and angry. "I lost my hearing, Marissa. I didn't lose my worth. I didn't lose my right to be treated like a member of this family. But you all treated my deafness like a death. Like I died and left behind this defective replacement you didn't know what to do with." "That's not... We never said..." "You didn't have to say it." Serena was crying now, tears running down her face, but her hands didn't falter. "You showed it. In every canceled plan, every conversation that happened around me instead of with me. Every time you made me feel like loving me was too much work." There was a long pause. On the screen, Marissa looked away, and when she looked back, there were tears in her eyes too. "I don't know how to fix this," she said quietly. "I don't know how to be what you need." "I needed you to try," Serena signed. "That's all, just to try. To learn my language, to include me. To see me as your sister instead of as a problem to solve." "I do see you as my sister." "No," Serena signed, and there was a finality in the motion. "You see me as the person I used to be. The hearing girl I was before I got sick. And you've spent 13 years mourning her instead of getting to know me." Another silence. Behind Marissa, Serena could see their mother hovering in the doorway, looking uncertain. Their father was nowhere to be seen. Of course he wasn't. "So what do you want from me?" Marissa asked. "What do you want from any of us?" Serena looked at Lucy's small hand in hers, at Ethan standing steadily beside her, present and supportive without trying to speak for her, at this apartment that had become a haven in less than 24 hours. When she signed again, her movements were slow and deliberate. I want you to decide if you want me in your life, really in your life. Not as a charity case or an obligation or someone you tolerate out of family duty. If you want a relationship with me, you need to meet me where I am. Learn to sign, make an effort, treat me like I matter. And if you can't do that, she paused, letting the weight of it settle. Then I need you to let me go, because I'm done begging my own family to love me. Marissa was openly crying now. Serena, please don't do this, not on Christmas. You did this on Christmas, Serena signed back. Yesterday, when you told me I wasn't immediate family. I'm just finally accepting the truth of it. She ended the call before her sister could respond, before she could see whatever expression crossed Marissa's face. The screen went dark, and Serena stood there in the middle of Ethan's living room, shaking with the aftermath of 13 years of suppressed pain finally released. Lucy was the first to move. She wrapped her arms around Serena's waist and held on tight, and Serena felt the small, solid warmth of her and started to cry harder. Not from sadness now, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen, being chosen, being valued exactly as she was. Ethan stepped closer and signed simply, "You were brave." "I was angry," Serena signed back. "Sometimes those are the same thing." They stood there, the three of them, as Christmas evening settled over the city outside. Somewhere in suburban Boston, Serena's family was dealing with the fallout of a conversation they'd avoided for over a decade. But here, in this small apartment, Serena felt something she'd been chasing her entire life. Peace. "I'm sorry you had to see that," she signed to Lucy. But the little girl shook her head fiercely. "I'm not sorry. She was mean to you, and you told her the truth. That's what brave people do." "When did you get so wise?" Serena signed, managing a watery smile. "I'm 7, Lucy signed matter-of-factly. "I know things." Ethan made hot chocolate, apparently his solution to all emotional crises, and they settled on the couch together, Lucy in the middle, the Christmas tree lights casting a soft glow over them all. Eventually, Lucy's eyes began to droop, and Ethan carried her to bed, tucking her in with the practiced efficiency of a parent who'd done this 1,000 times. When he came back to the living room, Serena was standing by the window again, looking out at the dark street below. He approached carefully, making sure she saw him before signing. "How are you feeling?" "Lighter," she signed honestly, "and terrified and free, all at the same time." "That's a lot of emotions." "It's been a lot of a day. A lot of 2 days, actually." She turned to face him fully. "Ethan, I meant what I said earlier, about maybe staying for a while. But after that call, after everything, I don't want you to feel obligated. I don't want to be your charity project." His expression turned fierce. "You're not a charity project. You're—" He paused, searching for words. "You're someone who walked into our lives at exactly the right moment. Lucy hasn't been this happy in months, and I—" He trailed off, looking uncertain. "You what?" Serena signed gently. "I like having you here," he signed finally. "Not because you need rescuing. Not because I feel sorry for you, but because you fit. In our space. In our lives. And I hope, we fit in yours too." Serena felt her heart flutter dangerously. This was moving fast, too fast by any reasonable standard. She'd known this man for barely a day, but sometimes connection happened like that. Sometimes you met someone and recognized them, not as a stranger, but as someone who'd been missing from your life all along. "You do," she signed quietly. "You both do." They stood there in the gentle glow of the Christmas tree, and Ethan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he gently took one of her gloved hands, Lucy's gift, and held it carefully. "Stay," he signed with his free hand, "for as long as you want. We'll figure out the rest as we go." "Okay," Serena signed back. "I'll stay." And as they stood there, hands linked, the weight of the day's emotions settling into something that felt almost like hope, Serena realized something fundamental had shifted. She'd spent 13 years trying to fit into a family that didn't want to make room for her. But maybe family wasn't something you had to earn or beg for. Maybe family was simply this: people who saw you and chose you and made space for you exactly as you were. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and silent. Inside, Serena stood with her hand in Ethan's, and for the first time since she'd lost her hearing, she didn't feel lost herself. She felt found. The next 3 days unfolded with a rhythm that felt both foreign and achingly familiar to Serena. She woke each morning on Ethan's couch, sunlight streaming through the windows, the smell of coffee already brewing in the kitchen. Lucy would pad out in her pajamas, signing a sleepy "good morning" before climbing onto the couch beside her for what became their ritual morning cuddle. Ethan would emerge shortly after, hair disheveled, making breakfast with varying degrees of success. On the morning of December 27th, Serena woke to find Lucy already awake, sitting cross-legged at the end of the couch with her gel pens and a stack of paper, drawing something with intense concentration. Serena sat up slowly, and Lucy noticed immediately, her face breaking into a grin. "You're awake! Look what I'm making!" She held up a series of drawings, stick figures that were clearly meant to be the three of them. One showed them decorating the Christmas tree. Another showed them eating pancakes. A third showed them all sleeping in different rooms of the apartment, with hearts floating above each figure. "These are beautiful," Serena signed. "Are they for your room?" Lucy shook her head emphatically. "They're for you, so when you move into the other room you have pictures to remember that you belong here." The casual way Lucy said, "when you move into the other room," not if, but when, made Serena's chest tighten. She signed carefully, "Lucy, honey, I'm still just visiting. I have my own apartment, my own life." "But you could have a life here too," Lucy signed with the simple logic of childhood. "You said you'd stay as long as you wanted, and you still want to stay, right?" Before Serena could formulate an answer that was both honest and age-appropriate, Ethan appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the day in jeans and a navy sweater. He must have caught the tail end of their conversation because his expression was apologetic. "Lucy, we talked about this," he signed gently. "Serena is our guest. We can't pressure her." "I'm not pressuring," Lucy protested. "I'm just asking. There's a difference." Ethan looked at Serena with a question in his eyes, an invitation to set boundaries if she needed to. But the truth was, she didn't want boundaries. Not really. The idea of going back to her studio apartment, to the silence and isolation that had defined her life for years, felt increasingly unbearable. "How about this?" Serena signed to Lucy. "I'll stay through the new year. That gives us time to figure out what makes sense. Deal?" "Deal," Lucy signed enthusiastically, then immediately returned to her drawings, satisfied with this victory. Ethan caught Serena's eye and signed, "Coffee?" They moved into the kitchen together, and once they were out of Lucy's sightline, Ethan signed more seriously. "I'm sorry if she's being too much. She gets attached quickly, and after her mom—" He paused, searching for words. "She's always looking for people to love. Sometimes it comes on strong." "It's not too much," Serena signed back. "If anything, it's healing. To be wanted that simply, without conditions or expectations." "Have you heard from your family again?" Ethan asked, pouring coffee into 2 mugs, one of which was Lucy's handmade Best Dad creation. Serena shook her head. "Marissa texted yesterday, said we should talk when everyone's calmed down. My mother sent a message saying I hurt my sister's feelings and owe her an apology." "Are you going to apologize?" "For what?" Serena signed, her movements sharp. "For finally telling the truth? For refusing to pretend their neglect is acceptable?" Ethan set down his coffee and signed carefully, "I don't think you should apologize, but I also think, and tell me if I'm overstepping, but I think you need to decide what you actually want from them. Are you done completely, or are you leaving the door open?" It was a fair question, one Serena had been avoiding thinking about too deeply. "I don't know," she signed honestly. "Part of me wants to cut them off completely, to stop letting them hurt me. But another part keeps hoping they'll wake up and realize what they're losing." "And if they don't?" Ethan signed gently. "If they never change?" "Then I guess I have to decide if I can accept them as they are. or if I need to walk away for my own sanity. They stood in the kitchen as morning light filtered through the window, and Ethan reached across the counter to tap her wrist. Not a touch of pity, but of solidarity, of understanding. "Whatever you decide," he signed, "you have people here who see your worth, even if they can't." The words settled over Serena like a blanket, warm and comforting and terrifying in their implications. She was falling into this life, into these people, faster than was wise. But wisdom had never kept her warm at night. Wisdom had never made her feel seen. Their moment was interrupted by a loud crash from the living room, followed by Lucy's voice, high and distressed in a way that needed no translation. They both rushed in to find her standing amidst a pile of books that had fallen from the shelf, tears streaming down her face, signing frantically. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I was trying to reach the art book on the top shelf to show Serena and I pulled too hard, and now everything fell and I broke Mommy's picture frame." Sure enough, amidst the scattered books was a broken picture frame, glass shattered across the floor. The photo inside, protected by the glass, showed a beautiful woman with Lucy's same dark curls, holding an infant and laughing at whoever was behind the camera. Ethan's face went pale. He knelt carefully, avoiding the glass, and picked up the photo with hands that trembled slightly. "It's okay," he signed to Lucy, though his movements were stiff. "Accidents happen. Go to your room while I clean up the glass. You're not in trouble." But Lucy was crying harder now, signing through her tears. "But it was Mommy. It was the picture from my first birthday. And now it's broken, and I broke it, and I'm sorry." Serena knelt beside Lucy, gently turning the child's face toward her so she could see her signs clearly. "Hey, look at me. The picture is fine, see? The glass broke, but your mommy's picture is perfect. Your dad can get a new frame. Everything's okay." "But Daddy's sad," Lucy signed, and it was said with such perceptiveness that Serena's heart ached. "He gets sad when he looks at Mommy's pictures. I know he tries to hide it, but I can tell." Serena glanced at Ethan, who was carefully picking up pieces of glass with a dustpan, his face carefully neutral in that way that meant he was working very hard to hold something back. "Your dad gets sad because he loved your mom very much," Serena signed to Lucy. "And when someone we love is gone, we feel sad sometimes. But that's okay. Sad isn't bad. It just means we remember them." "Do you get sad about your family?" Lucy asked with the directness that children specialize in. "Sometimes," Serena signed honestly, "but I'm learning that family isn't just about blood. It's about who chooses to love you." Lucy processed this, then signed quietly, "I choose to love you." The words hit Serena like a physical force. She pulled Lucy into her arms and held her tight, this child who had no reason to love her except that she'd decided to. This little girl whose heart was so big it seemed impossible that one small body could contain it all. When she pulled back, Ethan had finished cleaning up the glass and was standing with the photo in his hands, his expression unreadable. "Lucy, why don't you show Serena your art supplies in your room?" he signed. "I'll be there in a minute." Lucy nodded and took Serena's hand, pulling her down the hallway. As they walked away, Serena glanced back to see Ethan sinking onto the couch, the photo pressed to his chest, his shoulders shaking with silent grief. In Lucy's room, a cheerful explosion of color with drawings taped to every available surface, the little girl began pulling out bins of crayons, markers, and paints with renewed enthusiasm. But Serena's mind was still on Ethan, alone in the living room with his memories. "Your dad really loved your mom, didn't he?" Serena signed. Lucy nodded seriously. "He says she was the best person he ever knew, that she made everything better just by being in the room. Sometimes at night I hear him talking to her picture, telling her about me, about what I did that day." Serena's throat tightened. She'd been so focused on her own pain, her own family's rejection, that she hadn't fully considered what Ethan was carrying. This man who'd opened his home to a stranger, who made breakfast every morning with tired eyes and steady hands, who'd built an entire life around his daughter's needs while grieving a loss that would never fully heal. "Do you remember your mom?" Serena signed gently. "A little bit," Lucy signed, her small hands moving slowly as she searched for memories. "I remember she smelled like flowers, and she sang to me. I can't hear the songs anymore in my head, but I remember feeling safe when she sang. That's a beautiful memory. Daddy says Mommy would have liked you," Lucy signed suddenly. He didn't say it out loud, but I saw him look at you yesterday and then look at Mommy's picture and smile. That's how I know. Before Serena could process this information, Ethan appeared in the doorway. His eyes were red-rimmed, but his face was composed, and he signed to Lucy. I'm going to run out to the hardware store to get a new frame. Will you be okay here with Serena for an hour? We'll be great, Lucy signed. We're going to do art. Serena, is that okay? Ethan signed, and there was something vulnerable in the question, an acknowledgement that he was asking her to take care of the most precious thing in his life. Of course, Serena signed. Take your time. After Ethan left, Lucy insisted on setting up a full art studio on her bedroom floor. She pulled out construction paper, watercolors, glitter glue, and a variety of other supplies that made Serena's artist heart sing. They spent the next hour creating, Lucy painting enthusiastic abstract shapes while Serena sketched, falling into that meditative state where her hands moved without conscious thought. She was working on a drawing of Lucy, capturing the intense concentration on the child's face as she painted, when Lucy suddenly stopped and turned to her. Serena, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think you could be my bonus mom? The question hung in the air between them, innocent and devastating in its simplicity. What do you mean by bonus mom? Serena signed carefully. Emma has a bonus mom, Lucy signed. Her parents got divorced, and her dad got married again, and Emma says she has her real mom and her bonus mom, and both of them love her. I don't have a mom at all. But if you stayed, maybe you could be my bonus mom? Serena's hands froze mid-sign. How did you explain to a 7-year-old that the adult world was complicated? That just because you cared for someone, loved someone even, didn't mean you could simply step into a role that enormous? Lucy, she signed slowly, being someone's mom is a very big responsibility. It's not something that happens quickly. And your dad and I, we're friends. We're not... She struggled to find age-appropriate language. We're not together in the way that people usually are when they become someone's parents. But you could be, Lucy signed with the absolute certainty of a child who hasn't learned that wanting something isn't enough to make it real. You like each other, I can tell. And you're already kind of like a family. Kind of like a family isn't the same as being a family, Serena signed gently. Lucy's face fell, and Serena immediately felt terrible. She reached out and pulled the little girl close. But you know what? She signed when Lucy looked up at her. Even if I'm not your bonus mom, I can still be someone who loves you, someone who's in your life. That's important too, isn't it? I guess, Lucy signed, but she looked unconvinced. They went back to painting, but the easy atmosphere had shifted. Serena could feel Lucy's disappointment like a physical presence in the room, and it made her chest ache. She hadn't intended to hurt this child, hadn't intended to become so important to her so quickly. But wasn't that what she'd done? She'd let herself fall into this family's life without thinking about the implications, without considering what it would mean when, if, she left. When Ethan returned an hour later with a new frame, he found them in the kitchen making grilled cheese sandwiches, or rather, Serena making them while Lucy set the table with elaborate care, arranging napkins in precise patterns. Something wrong? Ethan signed to Serena, clearly picking up on the tension. Later, she signed back, glancing meaningfully at Lucy. They ate lunch with Lucy, chattering about her drawings, showing her father each one, and explaining the complex narratives behind them. Ethan listened with the patience of a parent who'd heard thousands of such explanations and would happily hear thousands more, and Serena watched them with a growing sense of both longing and fear. After lunch, Lucy settled in for her afternoon quiet time. Not quite a nap anymore, Ethan explained, but an hour where she read or played quietly in her room. It was a routine he'd established when she was younger to preserve his own sanity, and he'd maintained it as sacred time even as she'd grown older. Once Lucy's door was closed, Ethan turned to Serena with concerned eyes. What happened? Serena explained the conversation about bonus moms, watching Ethan's expression shift from confusion to understanding to something that looked like guilt. I'm sorry, he signed. I should have seen this coming. Should have talked to her about boundaries. It's not your fault, Serena signed. She's 7. She sees things in simple terms. But Ethan, we need to be honest about what this is, what I'm doing here. What do you think you're doing here? Ethan signed, and there was something careful in the question, as if he was afraid of the answer. I don't know anymore, Serena signed honestly. I came to your house on Christmas Eve because I had nowhere else to go. But it's been 3 days and I'm still here, and Lucy is getting attached, and I... She paused, searching for courage. I'm getting attached too, to both of you, and that scares me. Why does it scare you? Because what happens when reality catches up? Serena signed, her movements sharp with frustration. When you both realize that having me here is complicated, when Lucy's grandparents find out you're living with a deaf woman you barely know, when I can't find work and become a financial burden, when... Ethan reached across the counter and gently touched her wrist, stopping her spiral. You're borrowing trouble, he signed. Those are all what-ifs. Right now, in this moment, having you here works. Lucy is happy. I'm happy. And unless I'm completely misreading things, you're happy too. I am, Serena admitted, but happiness doesn't pay rent. It doesn't solve the practical problems of me living in your space indefinitely. Then we solve them, Ethan signed simply. Together. If you want to stay, really stay, then we figure out how to make it work. You're an illustrator. Can't you do that from anywhere? In theory, Serena signed, but I've been struggling to find work. Most publishers want to work with people they can call on the phone, have easy video meetings with. My deafness becomes a complication they'd rather avoid. That's their loss, Ethan signed firmly. Have you tried reaching out to deaf organizations or schools or... He paused, thinking. What about children's books specifically about deaf characters? Or books that are designed to be bilingual, English and ASL? Serena stared at him. In all her years trying to break into illustration, she'd never considered specializing in deaf representation. She'd been so focused on proving she could do everything hearing illustrators could do that she'd never stopped to think about the unique perspective she could offer. That's actually a really good idea, she signed slowly. I have them occasionally, Ethan signed with a slight smile. Look, Serena, I know this is all happening fast. Too fast, probably. But sometimes the best things in life come when we stop overthinking and just let them happen. Is that what you think this is? Serena signed. One of the best things? Ethan held her gaze for a long moment before signing. I think you showing up in our lives was the best thing that's happened to us in 4 years. And I think if you're willing to take the risk, we'd like you to stay. Not as a guest, as part of this family. The words hung between them, loaded with implications neither was quite ready to fully examine. Before Serena could formulate a response, there was a sharp knock at the door. Ethan frowned. They weren't expecting anyone, and moved to check the peephole. When he turned back to Serena, his face was pale. It's your sister, he signed. Serena's stomach dropped. What? A blonde woman. She looks like you. She's signing something at the door. I can see her hands through the window. Serena's mind raced. How did Marissa even know where she was? Had she somehow tracked her phone, put out some kind of missing person alert? I'll deal with it, she signed, moving toward the door. You don't have to, Ethan signed quickly. I can send her away. But Serena shook her head. No, if she came all the way here, I need to face her. She opened the door to find Marissa standing in the hallway, dressed impeccably in a camel-colored coat and leather boots, her makeup flawless despite the cold. But her eyes were red-rimmed, and there was something frantic in her expression that Serena had never seen before. How did you find me? Serena signed coldly. Marissa pulled out her phone and opened it to show a tracking app. You're on Mom and Dad's family phone plan. I used the location feature. She had the grace to look embarrassed. I know it's invasive, but you weren't answering my texts and I was worried. Worried, Serena signed flatly. That's rich. Can we talk? Marissa signed and her movements were clumsy, years of disuse evident in every awkward gesture. Please, I came all the way here. Serena wanted to say no, wanted to slam the door in her sister's face the way her sister had been slamming metaphorical doors on her for years. But she could feel Ethan's presence behind her, could imagine what he would say about giving people chances. And against her better judgment, she stepped aside. Fine, but not here. She turned to Ethan and signed, There's a coffee shop on the corner, right? We'll go there. Are you sure? Ethan signed. Do you want me to come with you? No, Serena signed. This is something I need to do alone. But as she grabbed her coat, still wearing Lucy's gloves, Ethan caught her hand and signed quickly, "If you need me, text. I'll come immediately." The simple assurance settled something in Serena's chest. She had backup. She had people who would come if she called. That was more than she'd had 3 days ago. The coffee shop was nearly empty in the post-holiday lull, just a few students on laptops and an elderly couple sharing a muffin. Serena and Marissa ordered, Serena writing her order on her phone, Marissa speaking hers, and settled at a table in the back corner where they could have privacy. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Marissa pulled out her phone again and opened a notes app, typing quickly. She turned it to show Serena, "I'm sorry my signing is terrible. I should have practiced more." "You should have practiced it all," Serena signed back, and Marissa had to look up the signs on her phone to understand, which proved Serena's point more effectively than words could have. Marissa typed again, "I know you're angry, you have every right to be, but can you please just listen? I came here because I need to say things I should have said years ago." Serena gestured for her to continue, her expression guarded. Marissa took a shaky breath and started typing, pausing occasionally to compose her thoughts. "When you lost your hearing, I was 17. I was getting ready for college, thinking about my future, completely wrapped up in my own life. And then suddenly, you were sick, and everything changed. Mom fell apart. Dad threw himself into work. And I didn't know what to do. You were my little sister, the one who always copied me, who wanted to do everything I did. And then you couldn't hear me anymore, and I didn't know how to be your sister." Serena's hands remained still, her face carefully neutral. Marissa continued typing, tears starting to slide down her carefully made-up face. "I handled it badly. I know that. I made your disability about me, about how hard it was for me, how much it changed my life. I never stopped to think about what you were going through, what you were losing. And then years passed, and it got easier to just not deal with it, to make excuses, to cancel plans, to let you fade into the background of our family, because confronting my own guilt and selfishness was too hard." She paused, wiping her eyes, then typed more. "The truth is, I've been jealous of you." Serena's eyes widened. She made a sharp gesture. "What?" "Jealous," Marissa typed. "Because even after losing your hearing, even after everything our family put you through, you built a life. You became an artist. You learned to be independent. You're stronger than I ever was. And I resented you for that. I resented that you didn't need us, that you found ways to be happy without us. It made me feel like a failure as a sister." Serena's hands moved before she could stop them, sharp and angry. "So you made it worse? You pulled away more? That's your logic?" Marissa watched her signs using a translation app on her phone to catch what she didn't understand, then typed back, "I know it doesn't make sense. But when you're drowning in your own insecurity, you don't think logically. You just react. And I reacted by pushing you away before you could push me away." "I was wrong," she typed, the words appearing slowly, deliberately. "About all of it. You were right on the phone. I have been mourning the sister I lost instead of getting to know the sister you became. And that's not fair to you. It's not fair to either of us." Serena felt something crack in her chest, not breaking, but opening. She signed slowly, and Marissa struggled to follow. "Why now? Why are you here now after 13 years of not trying?" Marissa typed, "Because Mom asked me what I would tell you at your funeral. She asked if I could live with myself if something happened, and the last thing I said to you was that you weren't immediate family. It's morbid, I know. But it made me realize I don't want that to be our story. I don't want to lose you completely because I was too proud or too scared or too lazy to do the work." She set down her phone and looked directly at Serena, and for the first time in years, Serena saw her sister. Really saw her. Not the perfect, untouchable Marissa who seemed to glide through life without effort, but a flawed, frightened woman who'd been drowning in her own inadequacy and taking it out on the people around her. Marissa picked up her phone again and typed, "I can't promise I'll be perfect. I can't promise I'll learn to sign fluently overnight or that I'll never make mistakes. But I want to try. Really try this time. If you'll let me." Serena sat back in her chair, her mind spinning. This was what she'd wanted. Her family to acknowledge their failures, to commit to doing better. But now that it was happening, she felt strangely hollow. Because she knew, on some deep level, that even if Marissa meant every word, it might not be enough to repair 13 years of damage. She signed slowly, carefully, making sure Marissa watched her hands. "I want to believe you," she signed, and Marissa frantically typed the signs into her translation app. "But I've believed promises before. From you, from Mom and Dad, promises to learn to sign, promises to include me, promises that things would get better, and they never did." Marissa's face crumpled. She typed, "I know, and I understand if you can't trust me, but please, can we at least try? Can I at least start learning? Even if you never forgive me, I want to do better." "Why?" Serena signed. "If not for me, then why?" Marissa was quiet for a long moment, then typed something that made Serena's breath catch. "Because I want my sister back. And because I'm getting married in April, and I can't imagine walking down that aisle knowing you hate me. Knowing I destroyed something that should have been forever." Serena felt tears building behind her eyes. She signed something short, sharp. "I don't hate you." Marissa looked up from her phone, confused. Serena grabbed a napkin and wrote it out. "I don't hate you. I'm angry. I'm hurt. But I don't hate you." Marissa started crying in earnest now, and Serena found herself reaching across the table, taking her sister's hand in her gloved one, Lucy's gift warming both of them. They sat like that for a long moment, two sisters who'd lost each other and were tentatively, fearfully trying to find their way back. Finally, Serena pulled out her own phone and typed, "If you want to try, here's what I need. I need you to commit to learning ASL. Real commitment, classes, practice, effort. I need you to include me in family events and actually make sure I can participate. And I need you to stop treating my deafness like something to be overcome and start treating it as just part of who I am." Marissa read it and nodded emphatically, typing back, "Yes, all of that. I'll sign up for classes this week. I'll talk to Mom and Dad about doing family ASL lessons, whatever it takes." And Serena added, typing more, "I need you to understand that I'm building a new life, new family, people who see me and value me. If you want to be part of my life, you have to accept that these people are important to me now." Marissa looked confused. She typed, "The man who answered the door? And the little girl I saw in the window?" Serena nodded. Are you dating him?" Serena paused, then typed honestly, "I don't know what we are, but they took me in when I had nowhere to go. They've shown me more love in 3 days than our family has shown me in 13 years. So yes, they're important to me." Marissa processed this, then typed slowly, "Then I want to meet them, properly. I want to apologize for tracking you down. I want them to know that I'm trying to be better." "Not today," Serena signed firmly, and Marissa understood the gesture, if not the exact meaning. Serena typed, "Not today. This is too raw, but maybe after the new year, after I've had time to process all of this." "That's fair," Marissa typed. Then, after a pause, "Can I hug you?" Serena hesitated, then nodded. They stood awkwardly, and Marissa wrapped her arms around her younger sister with a desperation that spoke of years of missed embraces. Serena let herself sink into it for just a moment. Let herself remember what it felt like to be held by someone who'd known her before deafness, before loss, before all the walls had gone up. When they pulled apart, Marissa signed something slow and clumsy but recognizable. "I love you." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough to fix everything. But it was a start. They parted at the coffee shop door, Marissa heading back to her car, Serena walking the block back to Ethan's apartment building. As she climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, Serena felt the weight of the conversation settling over her like snow, cold and heavy, but also somehow cleansing. She let herself into the apartment to find Ethan and Lucy on the couch, reading together. Lucy looked up immediately and signed, "You're back. Are you okay? Was your sister mean?" "She was complicated," Serena signed back. "But I think maybe we're going to try to fix things." "Good," Lucy signed with satisfaction, "because families should fix things when they break. That's what glue is for." Ethan smiled at his daughter's logic, then signed to Serena. "Do you want to talk about it?" Serena shook her head. "Not yet. Right now I just want to be here, with you both. Is that okay?" It's perfect, Ethan signed. She settled onto the couch beside them, and Lucy immediately curled up against her side. As Ethan continued reading, signing the story so both Serena and Lucy could follow, Serena felt something shift inside her chest, something that felt almost like peace. Her family might be trying to change, might be taking tentative steps toward rebuilding what had been broken. But regardless of whether they succeeded, Serena knew with sudden, crystalline clarity that she already had a family. It was right here, in this small apartment, with this man who made terrible pancakes and this child whose heart was bigger than the world. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The days between Christmas and New Year's Eve developed a rhythm that felt dangerously close to permanence. Serena found herself waking earlier each morning, no longer startled by the unfamiliar ceiling, but comforted by it. She'd taken over making breakfast, discovering that while Ethan's pancakes were indeed abstract art, she could make French toast that even Lucy declared restaurant good. They'd established small routines. Lucy's morning cuddle, coffee with Ethan while Lucy got dressed, the three of them at the kitchen table planning their day in a mixture of signs and laughter. On December 29th, Ethan had to return to work. He was a social worker at a nonprofit that served homeless youth, and while the office was operating on limited hours during the holiday week, he had clients who needed check-ins and paperwork that couldn't wait until January. "I feel terrible leaving you here," he signed as he gathered his laptop and work bag. "You don't have to stay. I know you have your own apartment, your own things." "Ethan," Serena cut him off with a smile. "I'm fine. Lucy and I have plans. We're going to work on art projects and maybe bake cookies if we're feeling ambitious." "The kitchen might not survive," Ethan signed with mock seriousness. "Then we'll rebuild it," Serena signed back. "Go, do your job, save the world. We'll be here when you get back." Something in Ethan's expression shifted at those words. "We'll be here when you get back," as if the casual domesticity of the statement had hit him with unexpected force. He signed quickly, "Thank you," then knelt to hug Lucy goodbye. After he left, the apartment felt different, quieter, more intimate. Lucy led Serena to the kitchen table, where she'd already laid out supplies for their project: construction paper, markers, glue sticks, and a stack of old magazines. "We're making vision boards," Lucy signed importantly. "Miss Rodriguez taught us in school. You make a picture of all the things you want to happen in the new year." "That sounds perfect," Serena signed. "What do you want to happen?" Lucy considered this with the gravity of someone making a life-altering decision. "I want to get better at reading, and I want to learn more signs so I can talk faster with Emma, and—" She paused, suddenly shy. "I want you to stay. Is that okay to put on a vision board?" Serena's throat tightened. She signed carefully. "You can put anything you want on your vision board, but Lucy, you know I can't promise—" "I know," Lucy signed, cutting her off. "You said you don't know what comes next, but wanting something and having it come true are different things. Miss Rodriguez said vision boards are about hope, and I hope you stay." How could Serena argue with that? She couldn't. So instead, she pulled Lucy close and kissed the top of her head, then set about making her own vision board. She cut out images almost without thinking. A woman working at a desk with a smile on her face. A family laughing together. Hands signing against a sunset. The words brave, worthy, and home in various fonts and colors. As she arranged them on her board, she realized she was creating a map of the life she wanted. Not the life she'd been told she should want, but the one that had been slowly taking shape in her heart over the past week. Lucy worked beside her with fierce concentration, and when she finished, she held up her board proudly. It showed a stick-figure family of three, carefully labeled Daddy, Me, and Serena, surrounded by hearts and stars and the words happy and together cut from magazines. "What do you think?" Lucy signed. "I think it's beautiful," Serena signed honestly, "and I think you have a very good heart." They spent the rest of the morning baking cookies, or attempting to. The first batch burned because neither of them had set a timer and they'd gotten distracted drawing. The second batch was underdone because they'd overcompensated. But the third batch came out perfectly golden and delicious, and they ate several warm from the oven while sprawled on the couch watching a nature documentary with subtitles. Around 2 in the afternoon, Lucy's eyes started to droop. She fought it valiantly, but eventually Serena signed, "Why don't you take a nap? I'll wake you up when your dad gets home." I don't take naps anymore, Lucy signed with wounded dignity. I'm 7. Then call it quiet time, Serena signed with a smile. Even grown-ups need quiet time. Lucy considered this logic, then nodded and padded off to her room. Within 10 minutes, Serena could see through the cracked door that she'd fallen asleep, curled around a stuffed elephant that looked well-loved and frequently hugged. Alone in the quiet apartment, Serena pulled out the sketchbook Ethan had given her for Christmas. She'd been avoiding using it, as if putting pencil to those perfect pages would somehow make everything real, would force her to acknowledge how much this place, these people, had come to mean to her. But now, with weak afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows and the comfortable silence of the apartment surrounding her, she opened to the first page and began to draw. Her hand moved almost without conscious direction, sketching the scene from Christmas Eve, the food court table, the moment Lucy had first approached her, the expression on Ethan's face as he'd signed, "Are you okay?" She worked with quick, confident strokes, capturing not just the physical details but the emotion, the loneliness and hope and unexpected connection. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear the door open, didn't notice Ethan's return until his shadow fell across her sketchbook. She looked up, startled to find him standing behind the couch, his face soft with wonder as he looked at her drawing. "That's us," he signed. "That's the moment we met." Serena nodded, suddenly self-conscious. "I hope you don't mind. I wanted to capture it, to remember." "Why would I mind?" Ethan signed, moving around to sit beside her. "It's beautiful. You're incredibly talented." He leaned closer to study the details, and Serena was acutely aware of his proximity, the warmth of his body, the subtle scent of his soap, the way his eyes traced over her work with genuine appreciation rather than polite interest. "Have you thought more about what I said?" he signed. "About reaching out to publishers who focus on deaf representation?" "I looked into it this morning," Serena signed. "While Lucy was watching her show, there are actually several small presses that specialize in diverse children's books. I sent query letters to 3 of them, along with my portfolio." "That's amazing," Ethan signed enthusiastically. "When did you find time to do all that?" "Lucy's show was very engaging," Serena signed with a smile. "She didn't need my supervision." Ethan laughed. She could see it in the movement of his shoulders, the way his face opened up, and signed, "You're good for us. For both of us. Do you know that?" The statement hung between them, loaded with meaning. Serena set down her sketchbook carefully and signed, "Ethan, we need to talk about what happens after New Year's." His expression shifted, becoming guarded. "Okay." "I can't keep sleeping on your couch indefinitely," Serena signed. "It's not fair to you or to Lucy, but I also don't want to—" She paused, searching for the right words. "I don't want to leave." "Then don't," Ethan signed simply. "It's not that simple," Serena signed back, frustrated. "There are practical considerations. Money, space, the fact that we barely know each other." "I know you make French toast better than anyone I've ever met," Ethan signed. "I know you're patient with Lucy in a way that most adults aren't. I know you're brave enough to tell your family the truth, even when it hurts. I know you see the world in a way that makes me want to see it better too." Serena's hands trembled as she signed. "That's not knowing someone. That's knowing the things that matter," Ethan interrupted. "Look, I'm not saying we have everything figured out, but I am saying that I don't want you to leave because of logistics we can solve. If you want to stay, we'll figure out how to make it work." "And if it doesn't work?" Serena challenged. "If we try this and it falls apart, Lucy will be devastated." "Lucy will be devastated if you leave now," Ethan signed bluntly. "At least if we try, there's a chance it works out." Before Serena could respond, there was a sharp knock at the door, urgent, insistent. Ethan frowned and moved to answer it, and Serena's stomach dropped as she saw his posture stiffen. Through the doorway, she could see an older couple, late 60s, well-dressed, the woman's face pinched with concern and the man's jaw set with determination. Ethan was signing and speaking simultaneously, his movements sharp with tension. Lucy's grandparents. It had to be. Serena stood and moved closer, catching the tail end of Ethan's signs. "Not a good time. You should have called first." The woman, clearly Lucy's grandmother, was speaking rapidly, her hands gesturing but not signing. The man was quieter, but his expression was stern. And then the grandmother's eyes landed on Serena, and her face transformed into something cold and assessing. Ethan noticed and immediately stepped between them, signing firmly as he spoke. "This is Serena. She's staying with us. And before you say anything, she's a friend. A good friend." The grandmother said something that made Ethan's face flush with anger. He responded sharply, his voice raised enough that Serena could see the tension in his throat. Whatever he said made the grandfather step forward, placing a hand on his wife's arm in a gesture that was clearly meant to be calming. Ethan turned to Serena and signed, "I'm sorry. This is Helen and Robert, Lucy's maternal grandparents. He paused, clearly struggling for diplomatic words. They dropped by unexpectedly. Helen was staring at Serena with undisguised suspicion. She said something to Ethan, gesturing at Serena, and Ethan's expression became thunderous. "She's deaf," he signed and said simultaneously. "So either sign or write it down, but don't talk about her like she's not standing right here." There was a moment of shocked silence. Then Helen pulled out her phone with obvious reluctance and typed something, showing it to Ethan rather than to Serena, which was telling in itself. Ethan read it and his jaw clenched. He turned to Serena and signed, "She wants to know how long you've been living here and whether I think it's appropriate with Lucy in the house." Serena felt heat rise in her face, anger mixed with humiliation. She stepped forward and gently took Helen's phone, typing directly, "I've been here since Christmas Eve. Your son-in-law was kind enough to offer me shelter when I had nowhere else to go. There's nothing inappropriate about his friendship or his kindness. And if you have concerns about Lucy's well-being, perhaps you should trust that her father, who has raised her alone for 4 years, knows what's best for her." She handed the phone back to Helen, who read it with narrowed eyes. The older woman typed something back and showed it to Ethan again, still refusing to engage with Serena directly. This time, Ethan didn't translate. He simply said and signed, "No, absolutely not." Helen's face flushed red. She said something sharp, and Robert finally spoke up, his tone placating. There was a rapid back and forth that Serena couldn't follow, and then Lucy's voice cut through it all. "Grandma? Grandpa?" She stood in the hallway in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her hair a disaster of tangles. When she saw her grandparents, she signed automatically. "What are you doing here?" Helen's expression softened immediately. She moved toward Lucy, arms outstretched, but Lucy took a step backward, toward Serena rather than toward her grandmother. "Why are you yelling at Daddy?" Lucy signed, her small face confused and upset. Helen looked helplessly at Ethan, clearly unable to respond in sign. Ethan knelt beside his daughter and signed gently, "Grandma and Grandpa came to visit, but we're having a grown-up conversation. Can you go back to your room for a few minutes?" "Are they mad about Serena?" Lucy signed, and her perceptiveness was startling. "Nobody's mad," Ethan signed, though his expression suggested otherwise. "Just complicated. Please, Lucy, just a few minutes." Lucy looked at Serena, who nodded encouragingly and signed, "I'll come check on you in a minute, I promise." Reluctantly, Lucy retreated to her room, casting worried glances over her shoulder. As soon as she was gone, Helen rounded on Ethan with renewed intensity. She pulled out her phone again and typed furiously, showing him the screen. Robert was saying something too, his voice low and urgent. Ethan read whatever Helen had written and his face went pale, then red, then pale again. He typed something back and shoved the phone at her, his hands shaking with anger. Serena touched his arm to get his attention and signed, "What's happening?" Ethan looked at her with something like desperation in his eyes. "They want to take Lucy, not permanently, but for an extended visit in Florida. They think—" He stopped, unable to continue. "They think I'm a bad influence," Serena finished for him. "They think I'm being irresponsible," Ethan corrected. "That I'm prioritizing my own needs over Lucy's. That having a woman I barely know living here is inappropriate and concerning." Serena felt something cold settle in her stomach. This was exactly what she'd feared, that her presence would cause problems, that she would become a weapon someone could use against Ethan. She stepped forward and took Helen's phone, typing carefully. "I understand your concern. You love Lucy and want what's best for her. But I want you to know that in the week I've been here, I've seen nothing but devotion from Ethan. He puts Lucy first in every decision. He's teaching her to be kind, to be brave, to stand up for people who need help. He's raising an extraordinary little girl. My presence here is temporary while I figure out my next steps. But even if it were permanent, I promise you, Lucy is safe, loved, and thriving. And if you can't see that, then perhaps the problem isn't Ethan's parenting. Perhaps it's that you're looking for problems instead of seeing the beautiful family he's built. She handed the phone back to Helen, whose expression had shifted from anger to something more complicated. Hurt, maybe? Or guilt. Robert read over his wife's shoulder, then took the phone and typed something. He showed it to Serena directly this time. Our daughter died in this apartment. Lucy was sleeping in the next room when Helen came in the morning and found her. Forgive us if we're protective. Forgive us if we want to make sure history doesn't repeat itself. The words hit Serena like a physical blow. She looked at Ethan, who had turned away, his shoulders rigid with tension. She'd known his wife had died suddenly, but she hadn't known the details. Hadn't known that this apartment, this space that had felt so safe and warm, was also the place where Lucy had lost her mother. Serena typed slowly. I'm so sorry for your loss. I can't imagine that pain. But hiding Lucy away in Florida won't protect her from loss. It will only teach her that love is something to be afraid of. Ethan is showing her how to be brave in the face of grief. That's not irresponsible. That's the greatest gift a parent can give. Helen read it, and her eyes filled with tears. She said something to Robert, and for the first time since arriving, her voice sounded broken rather than angry. Robert wrapped his arm around her, and they stood there in the doorway, this couple who'd lost their only child and were terrified of losing their granddaughter, too. Ethan finally turned back around, his face composed but his eyes red-rimmed. He signed as he spoke, making sure Serena could follow. Helen, Robert, I know you're worried. I know you think Lucy needs more stability, more family, more than one exhausted dad trying to do everything. But she's happy here. She has friends. She has school. She has a life. And she has me. He paused, then continued more quietly. Samantha died in our home. But she also lived here. We laughed here. We celebrated here. Lucy learned to walk here. And yes, it's hard sometimes. But running away to Florida won't change what happened. It will just teach Lucy that home is something to escape from, rather than something to build. Helen said something through her tears, and Ethan's expression softened slightly. I know you miss her, he signed and spoke. God, I know. I miss her every single day. But Lucy needs to grow up knowing her mother lived, not just that she died. And this is where she lived. This is where we were a family. I can't take that away from her by running. There was a long, heavy silence. Then Robert typed something and showed it to Ethan. We're not trying to take Lucy away from you. We're trying to help. Then help by trusting me, Ethan signed. Help by respecting that I'm her father, and I'm doing the best I can. Help by being her grandparents instead of trying to be her rescuers. Helen wiped her eyes and took the phone, typing, Can we at least take her for a few days? We're staying at a hotel downtown through New Year's. We barely got to see her at Christmas. Ethan looked torn. He glanced back toward Lucy's room, then at Serena, then at his in-laws. Let me ask her, he signed finally. It's her decision. He went to Lucy's room and emerged a moment later with his daughter, who looked small and uncertain in her rumpled pajamas. Helen immediately knelt down, reaching for her granddaughter, and Lucy let herself be hugged, but her body remained stiff. Ethan signed as he explained the situation to Lucy. Grandma and Grandpa want you to come stay with them at their hotel for a few days. You don't have to go if you don't want to, but they miss you and want to spend time with you. Lucy looked at her grandparents, then at Serena, then back at her father. Will Serena still be here when I come back? She signed. The question hung in the air, impossibly weighted. Ethan looked at Serena with an expression that clearly said, Your choice. Serena thought about the practical considerations, the logistics, the fact that she had her own apartment sitting empty, her own life waiting to be resumed, the fact that staying here was risky and complicated and could blow up in all their faces. Then she thought about Lucy's vision board, about French toast and terrible pancakes and Christmas lights, about Ethan's steady presence and the way he'd guided her through the darkness when she'd panicked, about feeling seen for the first time in 13 years. She signed clearly, deliberately, making sure everyone could see, Yes, I'll be here. Lucy's face split into a grin. She turned to her grandparents and spoke. Serena couldn't hear the words but could see the certainty in her small face and nodded. Helen looked like she wanted to argue, but Robert squeezed her hand and said something quiet. She closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. It took 20 minutes for Lucy to pack a small bag with Ethan's help, during which Helen and Robert waited in the living room in awkward silence. Serena made coffee that no one drank and wondered if she'd just made a terrible mistake. When Lucy was finally ready, she insisted on hugging Serena goodbye, a fierce, clinging embrace that lasted longer than was probably necessary. "You promised," Lucy signed when she pulled back. "You'll be here." "I promised," Serena signed back. "I'll be here." After they left, Lucy chattering to her grandparents about her vision board and her cookies and her plans for New Year's Eve, the apartment felt cavernously empty. Ethan stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the closed door, his hands hanging loosely at his sides. Serena approached carefully and touched his shoulder to get his attention. "Are you okay?" she signed. He turned to her and his face was raw with emotion. "You didn't have to do that," he signed. "Promise to stay. You didn't have to put yourself in the middle of this." "Yes, I did," Serena signed back. "Because Lucy asked, and because—" She paused, gathering courage. "Because I want to stay. Not because I have nowhere else to go. Not because I feel obligated, but because this—" She gestured around the apartment, then at him. "This feels like home. You feel like home." Ethan stared at her for a long moment, and then he did something that caught Serena completely off guard. He stepped forward and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. She could feel his heart hammering, could feel the tension in his body slowly releasing as she wrapped her arms around him in return. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the middle of the empty apartment, two people who'd found each other in the chaos of a mall food court and were now building something neither had planned for but both desperately needed. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan signed with a slight smile. "We should probably talk about logistics, if you're really staying." "Logistics," Serena signed back, matching his smile. "My favorite." They spent the evening figuring out the practical details. Serena would move her things from her studio apartment. She'd been month to month on the lease, so leaving wouldn't be complicated. She'd take Lucy's daybed in her room, giving her some space of her own. She'd contribute to groceries and utilities once she started getting freelance work. They'd establish boundaries, routines, ways to make sure they weren't just floating in this temporary bubble, but actually building something sustainable. But underneath all the practical talk, there was something else, a current of awareness that neither of them was quite ready to name. The way Ethan's hand lingered when he passed her a water glass. The way Serena found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, memorizing the way the lamplight caught in his hair. Around midnight, as they were finishing up their planning session, Serena's phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. "Mom wants to have lunch this weekend. Just you and her. She says she has things she needs to say. Will you come?" Serena showed the text to Ethan, who read it and signed, "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," Serena signed honestly. "Part of me wants to give her a chance, but I'm terrified of being disappointed again." "Then take me with you," Ethan signed. "Or let me wait nearby. You don't have to face them alone anymore." The simple offer made Serena's eyes sting with tears. She nodded and typed back to Marissa. "Tell Mom I'll come, but I'm bringing someone with me. And she needs to be prepared to actually communicate. In writing, if not in sign. This is her chance. If she wastes it, there won't be another one." Marissa's response came almost immediately. "She'll be there. She'll try. I promise." Serena set down her phone and looked at Ethan, at this man who'd become so essential to her life in such a short time. "Thank you," she signed, "for everything. For seeing me. For giving me a place to land. For not giving up on me even when I tried to run. Thank you for staying," Ethan signed back. "For choosing us. For showing Lucy, showing both of us, what it looks like when someone is brave enough to start over." They went to their separate sleeping spaces that night. Ethan to his room, Serena to the couch, but both of them lay awake for a long time, thinking about what came next. About the risks and possibilities. About the family they were building from the broken pieces of their old lives. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos, but inside that small third-floor apartment, Something new was taking root. Something fragile but strong. Something that looked a lot like hope. And as Serena finally drifted off to sleep, her last thought was that for the first time in 13 years, she was excited about tomorrow, about the future, about the life that was unfolding before her in ways she never could have imagined. She'd come to that mall on Christmas Eve certain she'd spend the holiday alone. And now, barely a week later, she was part of a family, imperfect, complicated, but unmistakably real. Sometimes, she thought drowsily, the best gifts come in the most unexpected packages. The morning of December 31st dawned cold and bright, the kind of crystalline winter day where everything seemed sharper, more vivid. Serena woke on the couch for what she'd promised herself would be the last time. Tomorrow, she'd start moving her things from her studio apartment, would officially make this space her home. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Ethan was already up, dressed in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made his eyes look impossibly blue. He was standing at the window with his coffee, staring out at the snow-covered street below, and something about his posture suggested he'd been there for a while. Serena patted over and touched his elbow gently. When he turned, his expression was complicated, nervous energy mixed with something that looked like anticipation. "Couldn't sleep?" she signed. "Too much thinking," he signed back. "About today. About Lucy coming home tonight. About your lunch with your mother." He paused. "About us." "What about us?" Serena signed, her heart suddenly hammering. Ethan set down his coffee and turned to face her fully. His hands moved slowly, deliberately, as if he was choosing each sign with care. "I've been thinking about what happens after today, after New Year's, when the holiday magic wears off and we're just two people trying to make this work." He paused. "And I realized something. I don't want this to be temporary. I don't want you staying here out of convenience or gratitude. I want—" He stopped, frustrated with himself, and pulled out his phone to type. He showed her the screen. "I want you to stay because you want to build a life with us. Because you see a future here. Because what I'm feeling isn't one-sided." Serena's hands trembled as she read the words. She took his phone and typed back, "What are you feeling?" Ethan took the phone, read her question, and looked at her with an expression so open and vulnerable it made her chest ache. He typed, "I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I already have. I know it's too fast, I know it's complicated, but watching you with Lucy, seeing how you fit into our lives, how you've made everything better just by being here, I can't pretend it's just friendship anymore." The words blurred as tears filled Serena's eyes. She took the phone with shaking hands and typed, "I'm scared. I'm so scared of this. Because I'm falling too and I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to trust that it's real, that it won't disappear like everything else in my life has disappeared." "Then we'll figure it out together," Ethan typed back immediately. "We'll go slow. We'll be careful. But Serena, I need you to know that what I feel for you isn't going away. And if you feel even a fraction of the same thing, I want to try. Really try." Serena set down the phone and lifted her hands to sign, needing the physical expression of her emotions. "I feel more than a fraction," she signed, tears spilling over. "I feel everything. You've shown me what it's like to be seen, to be valued, to be loved without conditions. And it terrifies me because I don't know if I deserve it." Ethan reached out and gently caught her hands in his, stilling them. He signed with one hand, awkward but determined. "You deserve everything." Then he did something that made Serena's breath catch. He lifted her gloved hands, Lucy's gift, still worn every day, and pressed them to his chest, over his heart. She could feel it beating beneath her palms, strong and steady and real. They stood like that for a long moment, the morning light streaming through the windows, the city waking up around them. And then Ethan signed with his free hand. "Can I kiss you?" Serena nodded, unable to form words or signs, and Ethan leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle and tentative and perfect. She felt it all the way to her toes. The warmth, the certainty, the rightness of it. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling like teenagers, and Ethan signed, "I've wanted to do that since Christmas Eve." "That was only a week ago," Serena signed back, teasing. "Longest week of my life," Ethan signed with mock seriousness. They stood close together, foreheads touching, until Serena's phone alarm went off, a reminder that she had to meet her mother for lunch in 2 hours. The real world intruding on their moment. Serena pulled back and signed, "I should get ready." "I'm coming with you," Ethan signed firmly, "all the way to the restaurant. I'll wait outside if you want privacy, but I'm not letting you face this alone." "Thank you," Serena signed, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The restaurant Marissa had chosen was a quiet bistro in Cambridge, the kind of place where suburban mothers met for book clubs and business lunches. Serena arrived 10 minutes early, Ethan beside her, and they stood outside in the cold while she gathered her courage. "You don't have to do this," Ethan signed. "You don't owe them anything." "I know," Serena signed back, "but I need to know if there's anything worth saving. I need to try one more time." "Then I'll be right here," Ethan signed, squeezing her hand. "Take as long as you need." Serena walked into the restaurant alone. Her mother was already seated at a corner table, dressed elegantly in a cream sweater and pearls, her hair perfectly styled. But up close, Serena could see the signs of strain, the lines around her eyes deeper than they'd been at Thanksgiving, the way her hands twisted the napkin in her lap. Claire Vale looked up as her daughter approached, and something flickered across her face. Guilt, hope, fear, all mixed together. She stood awkwardly, clearly uncertain whether a hug was welcome. Serena made the decision for her, remaining standing, and pulled out her phone to type. "Hello, Mom." Claire's face crumpled slightly at the formal greeting, but she pulled out her own phone. At least she'd come prepared to communicate. "Serena, thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." They sat down across from each other, and for a long moment neither moved. Then Claire started typing, her fingers moving slowly across the screen. "I don't know where to start. Marissa said you were very hurt by what happened at Christmas, that I canceled on you and it felt like rejection." Serena read it and felt anger flare hot in her chest. She typed back sharply. "It wasn't that it felt like rejection. It was rejection. You told me I wasn't immediate family. Do you have any idea what those words did to me?" Claire's hands shook as she read. She typed, "That wasn't what I meant. You are my daughter, your family. I just meant we were keeping it small. Just me and Dad and Marissa and her fiancé." "So 4 people is small, but 5 is too many?" Serena typed. "Or is it that the 5th person requires accommodation? That I make things complicated? Difficult?" "That's not fair," Claire typed. But even through text, Serena could hear the defensiveness. "No, what's not fair is that I've spent 13 years watching my own mother pull away from me," Serena typed, her fingers flying across the screen. "What's not fair is that you learned 10 signs and decided that was enough. That you stopped trying to connect with me because it was too hard. That you treated my deafness like a death instead of just a different way of being." Claire was crying now, tears running down her carefully made-up face. She typed through them. "You don't understand what it was like. Watching you in that hospital, not knowing if you'd live. And then when you survived but couldn't hear, I felt like I'd lost you anyway. My baby girl, who used to sing in the shower and laugh at my jokes and tell me everything. She was gone, and I didn't know how to reach the person who was left." Serena felt her own eyes burning but refused to let the tears fall. She typed, "I was right there, Mom. I was right there. Still singing in the shower even though I couldn't hear myself, still wanting to share my life with you, still your daughter. But you were so busy mourning who I used to be that you never bothered to meet who I became." "I know," Claire typed, and the simple admission seemed to cost her something. "I know I failed you. I failed you as a mother, and I don't know if I can fix it, but I need you to know. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, profoundly sorry." Serena stared at the words on the screen. She'd waited 13 years to hear her mother apologize, and now that it was happening, she didn't know what to do with it. "Sorry doesn't fix years of neglect," she typed. "Sorry doesn't give me back my family." "I know," Claire typed again, "but I want to try. Really try this time. I've already signed up for ASL classes. Marissa and I are going together. We start next week. And I've been watching videos online, practicing. Look." She set down her phone and lifted her hands, signing slowly and clumsily but clearly, "I love you. I'm sorry. Please give me another chance." It was imperfect. The grammar was off, the hand shapes uncertain. But it was an attempt, a real, genuine attempt. Serena felt something crack inside her chest. She signed back, knowing her mother wouldn't understand most of it, but needing to express it anyway. Do you know how long I've waited to see you try? How many years I spent hoping you'd learn my language instead of expecting me to navigate yours? Claire watched her hands with desperate concentration, catching maybe one word in 5. She picked up her phone and typed, "I don't understand everything you said, but I saw the emotion, I saw the pain, and I promise you, I'm going to learn, really learn this time. No more excuses." "Why now?" Serena typed. "Why, after all these years, are you suddenly ready to try?" Claire was quiet for a long time, staring at her phone. When she finally typed, her words came slowly. "Because Marissa told me what you said on the phone, about how we've been mourning the daughter we lost instead of loving the daughter we have. And she was right. You were right. I've been so stuck in my grief over what happened to you that I couldn't see what I was doing to you. And because when I imagined your wedding or your future children or any of the big moments of your life, and I imagined not being there because I'd pushed you away completely, I couldn't bear it. I can't lose you again, not when I'm the one choosing to lose you." Serena read the words through blurred vision. This was what she'd wanted: acknowledgement, accountability, change. But wanting it and having it were two different things, and she didn't know if she could trust it. "I need you to understand something," she typed. "I've built a new life, new family, people who see me and value me exactly as I am. If you want to be part of my life, you have to accept that these people are important to me. They're not replacements for you. They're additions. People I chose and who chose me back. Tell me about them," Claire typed. So Serena did. She told her mother about that Christmas Eve in the mall, about Lucy's small hand in hers and Ethan's steady presence. She told her about learning to make French toast and decorating the Christmas tree and feeling, for the first time in years, like she belonged somewhere. She told her about vision boards and gloves knitted with love and promises to stay. Claire listened, really listened, reading every word with full attention. When Serena finished, her mother typed, "They sound wonderful. I'd like to meet them." "If you'd allow that." "Why?" Serena challenged. "So you can judge whether they're good enough, whether I'm making a mistake?" "No," Claire typed firmly. "So I can thank them for being there when I wasn't, so I can see the family that helped my daughter heal, so I can be part of your life in whatever way you'll let me." Serena sat back in her chair, overwhelmed. This was more than she'd expected. More vulnerability, more honesty, more actual effort than her mother had shown in over a decade. "I need time," she typed finally. "I need to see if this is real or just another false start. I need you to prove that you're serious about learning, about changing, about actually being my mother instead of just someone who gave birth to me." "That's fair," Claire typed. "I'll prove it. However long it takes, I'll prove it." They sat in that restaurant for another hour, typing back and forth, starting the long, painful process of rebuilding something that had been broken for far too long. It wasn't miraculous. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a beginning. When Serena finally left the restaurant, Ethan was exactly where he'd promised to be, standing outside in the cold, stamping his feet to stay warm. His face lit up when he saw her, and he signed immediately. "How did it go?" Serena considered the question as she wrapped her arms around him, letting his warmth seep into her cold body. "It went okay," she signed when she pulled back. "Not perfect, but okay. She's trying, really trying, I think." "And how do you feel about that?" "Hopeful," Serena signed honestly, "and terrified, and cautiously optimistic, all at the same time." "That sounds about right," Ethan signed with a smile. "Ready to go pick up Lucy? She texted me an hour ago asking when we were coming to get her. In all caps, multiple exclamation points." "Let's go get our girl," Serena signed, and the casual use of "our" made Ethan's smile widen. They picked Lucy up from her grandparents' hotel, and the little girl practically launched herself at Serena the moment she saw her, signing frantically, "You're here! You're really here! I told Grandma and Grandpa you'd be here, and I was right." Helen and Robert stood in the hotel lobby, watching this reunion with complicated expressions. Robert looked resigned but accepting. Helen looked like she was still wrestling with something, but when Lucy pulled Serena over to introduce her properly, the older woman managed a stiff smile. Lucy signed with enthusiastic determination. Grandma, Grandpa, this is Serena. She's an artist, and she's teaching me to draw better, and she makes the best French toast, and she's staying with us, and she's... Lucy paused dramatically, then signed with utter certainty. She's part of our family now. Helen's eyes met Serena's, and something passed between them, not acceptance exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. Helen pulled out her phone and typed something, showing it to Serena. Lucy is very taken with you. I hope you understand how precious she is to us. Serena took the phone and typed back, I do. And I promise you. I would never do anything to hurt her. She's precious to me too. Helen read it and nodded slowly. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't hostile either. It was a start. Robert shook Ethan's hand and said something that made Ethan's expression soften. Then he turned to Lucy and knelt down, pulling her into a hug and saying something that made her giggle. As they left the hotel, Lucy between Ethan and Serena, holding both their hands and swinging her arms happily, Serena felt something settle in her chest. The pieces of her life were starting to fit together. Not perfectly, not without complications, but fitting nonetheless. They spent the rest of the afternoon preparing for New Year's Eve. Lucy insisted on making decorations, cutting out stars and moons from construction paper and taping them all over the apartment. Ethan attempted to make fancy appetizers from a recipe he'd found online and ended up ordering pizza when the appetizers turned into charred disasters. Serena set up her laptop and showed Lucy videos of New Year's celebrations around the world, signing explanations of different traditions and customs. As evening fell, Lucy took Serena's hand and pulled her into the bedroom they'd soon be sharing. I want to show you something, Lucy signed. She pulled out a box from under her bed, clearly a treasure chest of precious items. Inside were photos, drawings, small toys, a pressed flower, and at the very bottom, a silver locket. Lucy opened the locket carefully to reveal two tiny photos. One of her mother holding infant Lucy, both of them laughing, and one that was empty. Daddy gave me this, Lucy signed. He said the first picture is so I always remember Mommy loved me, and the second picture is empty because my family isn't finished yet. There's room for more people. She looked up at Serena with those enormous, earnest eyes. I want to put your picture in the empty spot. Is that okay? Serena's vision blurred with tears. She knelt down so she was at Lucy's level and signed carefully. I would be honored. So honored. Good, Lucy signed with satisfaction. Because you're not just staying in our house. You're staying in our family. There's a difference. What's the difference? Serena signed, curious about a 7-year-old's wisdom. Lucy thought for a moment, then signed. House is just a place. Family is people who choose to love you every day, even when it's hard, even when you're sad or grumpy or make mistakes. Family means I'm not going anywhere. Where did you learn that? Serena signed. From Daddy, Lucy signed simply. He says that to me every night. I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. And now you say it too. Serena pulled Lucy into her arms and held her tight. This child who'd seen so much loss but had somehow maintained a heart big enough to let new people in. She signed into Lucy's hair. I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. When they emerged from the bedroom, Ethan was setting up a countdown on the TV, a ball-drop broadcast with closed captions. He looked up and saw their faces, both slightly teary, and signed with concern. Everything okay? Everything's perfect, Lucy signed before Serena could respond. We were just doing important family stuff. Ethan looked at Serena questioningly, and she signed back. I'll tell you later. They settled on the couch as midnight approached, Lucy in the middle in her pajamas, a party hat perched crookedly on her head, Ethan on one side and Serena on the other. The TV showed crowds gathering in Times Square, people laughing and dancing and celebrating in ways that Serena couldn't hear but could feel the energy of. At 11:58, Ethan pulled out a bottle of sparkling cider and 3 glasses. He poured carefully and handed them out, then signed. We should make resolutions. New Year's traditions are important. I'll go first, Lucy signed enthusiastically. My resolution is to read 50 books this year, and to teach Serena all the best signs, and to make sure Daddy doesn't burn down the kitchen. Ethan laughed and signed. That's 3 resolutions. I'm ambitious, Lucy signed with a shrug. My turn, Ethan signed. My resolution is to be braver, to take risks, to trust that good things can happen even when they're unexpected. He looked at Serena as he signed the last part. They both turned to Serena, waiting. She thought about the past week, about how much had changed, how far she'd come from that lonely woman crying in a mall food court. She thought about her mother's clumsy signs and Marissa's tentative attempts at rebuilding. She thought about this apartment that had become a home and these people who'd become her family. She signed slowly, making sure they both could see. My resolution is to stop waiting for permission to be happy, to stop questioning whether I deserve good things, to choose love even when it's scary, to build a life instead of just surviving. Lucy clapped her hands together, and Ethan's eyes shone with something that looked like wonder. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Lucy bounced on the couch, party hat sliding sideways. 7, 6, 5. Ethan reached over Lucy's head to take Serena's hand. 4, 3, 2, 1. The TV exploded with celebration, confetti and fireworks and people kissing and cheering. Lucy threw her arms around both adults in a group hug that was equal parts enthusiastic and chaotic. And when they pulled apart, Ethan leaned over and kissed Serena softly, quickly, not wanting to make Lucy uncomfortable but needing to mark the moment. "Happy New Year?" he signed. "Happy New Year?" Serena signed back, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. They stayed up another hour, Lucy fighting sleep with impressive determination, until finally her eyes closed and she slumped against Serena's shoulder, her breathing evening out into sleep. Ethan carefully lifted his daughter and carried her to bed, tucking her in with practiced gentleness and kissing her forehead. When he came back to the living room, Serena was standing by the window, looking out at the city below, at the few remaining fireworks painting the sky with color she couldn't hear but could appreciate all the same. Ethan approached and wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. She leaned back into him, and for a moment they just stood there, two people who'd found each other against all odds. Finally, Ethan signed with one hand against her stomach. "Stay with me." "I am staying," Serena signed back, confused. "No," Ethan signed, turning her to face him. "I mean really stay. Not in Lucy's room, not as a temporary guest. Stay with me. In my room. In my life. In every way that matters." Serena's heart hammered against her ribs. This was fast, too fast by any conventional standard. But conventional hadn't led her anywhere good. Convention had left her alone and isolated and convinced she'd never belong anywhere. This messy, complicated, beautiful thing they were building, this felt right in a way that conventional never had. "Are you sure?" she signed. "We barely know each other. This could be a disaster." "It could be," Ethan agreed, signing slowly and deliberately. "Or it could be the best decision either of us ever made. I'm willing to risk it if you are." Serena thought about her vision board, still sitting on the kitchen table. Thought about the life she'd imagined for herself. Not the one she'd been told she should want, but the one she actually wanted. It looked a lot like this. Like this man and this child in this small apartment filled with love and laughter and the comfortable chaos of family. "Okay," she signed. "Yes, I'm staying, really staying." Ethan's face broke into a grin so wide and genuine that it transformed him into someone younger, less burdened, more hopeful. He kissed her properly this time, deep and thorough and full of promise, and Serena kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it. When they finally pulled apart, both of them breathing hard, Ethan signed, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I'm terrible at relationships. I'm messy. I work too much. I forget to buy groceries. I have trust issues from losing Samantha. I'm going to make mistakes." "I'm terrible at them too," Serena signed back. "I'm defensive. I expect rejection. I'll probably push you away sometimes just to test if you'll come back. I don't know how to accept love without questioning it." "So we're both disasters," Ethan signed. "Complete disasters," Serena agreed. "Want to be disasters together?" "Yes," Serena signed, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I really do." They moved her things over the next 2 days, not much, because Serena had never accumulated many possessions. Her clothes, her art supplies, her sketchbooks, a few books. The essentials of a life that had been lived small, waiting for permission to expand. Lucy helped enthusiastically, declaring each item's proper home with the authority of someone who'd given the matter serious thought. Serena's favorite sweater went in the second drawer. Her sketchbooks got their own shelf in the living room. Her toiletries shared space with Ethan's in the bathroom medicine cabinet, an intimacy that felt both terrifying and right. On January 3rd, Serena got an email that made her hands shake as she read it. One of the publishers she'd queried, a small press specializing in diverse children's books, wanted to see more of her work. They were particularly interested in her proposal for a picture book about a deaf girl learning to navigate a hearing world, told through illustrations that emphasized visual communication and deaf culture. She showed the email to Ethan, who immediately pulled her into his arms and signed against her shoulder. "See? I told you, you just needed to find the right audience." "It's not a contract," Serena signed, trying to manage her own hope. "It's just interest." "It's a beginning," Ethan corrected. "That's all any of us get. A beginning. What we do with it is up to us." That evening, Serena called her mother via video relay for the first time in years. Claire answered nervously, and when she saw Serena's face, she immediately started signing, slowly, clumsily, but genuinely. "Hello. How are you?" It was only 4 signs, but they were 4 more than Serena had seen from her mother in 13 years. "I'm good, Mom," Serena signed back, speaking simultaneously so the interpreter could voice for her mother. "I'm really, really good." They talked for an hour, mostly in writing still, with Claire practicing simple signs when she knew them. Serena told her about the publisher's interest, about officially moving in with Ethan and Lucy, about feeling like her life was finally, tentatively, starting to make sense. Claire cried when Serena showed her Lucy's locket with both pictures filled now, mother and daughter side by side. She typed, "I'm so happy you found a family, even if it's not us, especially if they love you the way you deserve." "They do," Serena typed back. "And maybe if you keep trying, you can be part of it too. Not instead of them, but alongside them." "I'd like that," Claire typed. "More than anything." It wasn't perfect. There were still hard conversations to be had, boundaries to establish, years of hurt that couldn't be healed overnight. But it was progress. Real, genuine progress. On January 5th, Lucy's first day back at school after winter break, she insisted Serena walk her to the bus stop with Ethan. The 3 of them stood in the cold morning air, Lucy's backpack almost as big as she was, her breath visible in puffy clouds. "Are you nervous?" Serena signed. "A little," Lucy admitted. "Everyone's going to ask what I did for Christmas, and I'm going to tell them about you. Is that okay?" "More than okay," Serena signed. "I'm proud to be part of your story." "Good," Lucy signed with satisfaction. "Because you're the best part." The bus arrived, and Lucy hugged them both fiercely before climbing aboard. Through the window, Serena could see her immediately start signing to a smaller girl, Emma, undoubtedly. And even from outside, she could see Lucy's hands moving enthusiastically, telling the story of her Christmas miracle. Ethan took Serena's hand as they walked back to the apartment, and she realized this was her life now. Morning bus stops and shared coffee and the comfortable silence of 2 people who didn't need words to understand each other. That afternoon, while Ethan was at work and Serena was sketching ideas for her book proposal, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Marissa standing there, holding a large bag and looking nervous. "Hi," Marissa signed, still clumsy but trying. "Can I come in?" Serena stepped aside and let her sister enter. Marissa set down the bag and pulled out her phone. "I've been practicing," she typed, "every day. I want to be able to have a real conversation with you in sign language by your birthday. That's my goal." "My birthday isn't until August," Serena typed back. "I know," Marissa typed. "That's how serious I am about this." She reached into the bag and pulled out photo albums, the family albums from their childhood. She opened one to show young Serena and Marissa, arms around each other, gap-toothed grins, inseparable. "I want to get back to this," Marissa typed. "I know we can't go back exactly. Too much has happened, but maybe we can build something new, something better, because we know what we're risking if we don't." Serena looked at the photos, at the sisters they used to be, and then at the woman her sister had become. Flawed, trying, imperfect, but genuine in her effort. "Okay," she typed, "let's try." "But Marissa, If you're going to be in my life, you have to be in all of my life. That includes Ethan and Lucy. They're not temporary, they're forever. Then I want to meet them, Marissa typed. Properly. I want to apologize for tracking you down. I want to start over the right way. So they made plans. Dinner the following week, all of them together. A chance to build bridges instead of walls. When Lucy came home from school that day, she found Serena and Marissa sitting at the kitchen table signing to each other. Marissa's sign still halting and uncertain, but Serena patient and encouraging. Lucy's face lit up. "You're teaching her," Lucy signed enthusiastically. "She's teaching me," Marissa signed slowly, and Lucy immediately moved to help, showing her the proper hand shape for sister and family and love. Ethan came home to find all three of them at the kitchen table, Lucy in the middle giving an impromptu ASL lesson, and the expression on his face was one of pure wonder. He caught Serena's eye and signed, "Is this real?" "It's real," she signed back. "It's messy and complicated and imperfect, but it's real." That night, after Marissa left and Lucy was in bed, Serena and Ethan lay together in his room, their room now, in the darkness. Ethan's arms were wrapped around her, and she could feel his heartbeat against her back, steady and sure. She turned in his arms so she could see his face in the dim light from the street below, and signed, "Thank you." "For what?" he signed back. "For seeing me in that mall," she signed. "For not looking away. For bringing me home." "Thank you for staying," Ethan signed. "For choosing us. For showing me that it's okay to start over. That loss doesn't have to be the end of the story." They lay there in comfortable silence, and Serena thought about how far she'd come in 2 weeks. From a woman alone in a food court, abandoned by her family and certain she'd never belong anywhere, to this, lying in the arms of a man who loved her, in a home filled with laughter and art, and a little girl who called her family. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It wasn't the life anyone had told her she should want. But it was hers, chosen, built, fought for. A life where her deafness wasn't something to overcome, but simply part of who she was, where her hands were celebrated as her voice rather than tolerated as a limitation. On January 15th, the publisher sent a contract. Not a huge advance, small presses rarely offered those, but a real contract for a real book that would tell a story that needed telling. Serena signed it with hands that shook, and Lucy insisted they celebrate with a cake that they made themselves, lopsided and overfrosted and perfect. In February, Serena had her first real dinner with her parents. Her father, who hadn't even tried to learn ASL, hired an interpreter for the evening and spent 3 hours actually communicating with his daughter, actually listening. It wasn't perfect. There was still awkwardness, still years of damage that couldn't be undone in one meal. But it was something. In March, Marissa got married and Serena stood beside her as maid of honor. Her sister had learned enough ASL to sign her vows in addition to speaking them, a gesture that made Serena cry and made Lucy, who attended as Serena's +1 along with Ethan, declare it the most romantic thing ever. In April, Helen and Robert came to visit for a weekend, and while Helen still struggled with accepting Serena's permanent place in Lucy's life, she was trying. She'd enrolled in an ASL class herself, determined to communicate directly with her granddaughter's chosen family. And through it all, through the progress and the setbacks and the ordinary days that made up a life, Serena kept drawing. She filled sketchbook after sketchbook with images of the family she'd found. Lucy laughing with her mouth wide open. Ethan making his terrible pancakes with a look of intense concentration. The three of them decorating their apartment for various holidays. The small, beautiful moments that made up a life lived fully. On the anniversary of the day they met, Christmas Eve, 1 year later, they returned to that same mall. Not to shop, but to remember. They stood in the food court, and Serena pointed out the exact table where she'd been sitting when Lucy first approached her. "I was so lonely," she signed to both of them. "I thought I would spend my whole life alone, and then you appeared." "We were lonely too," Lucy signed solemnly. "We just didn't know it until you filled up the lonely spots." "That's very profound for an 8-year-old, Serena signed with a smile. "I'm very wise," Lucy signed back with a completely straight face. Ethan pulled them both close, and the three of them stood there in the middle of the bustling mall, a small island of stillness and connection in the chaos around them. People rushed past, wrapped up in their own Christmas preparations, completely unaware of the miracle that had happened in this ordinary place 1 year ago. Because that's what it had been, Serena realized. A miracle. Not the flashy kind from movies, but the quiet kind that happens when people choose kindness over convenience. When a little girl tugs her father's sleeve and says, "We have to help her." When a man approaches a crying stranger and asks, in her own language, "Are you okay?" When a family opens their home and their hearts and says, "You belong here." As they left the mall, walking out into the December cold with Lucy between them, Serena thought about the woman she'd been 1 year ago. Lost. Invisible. Convinced she'd never find her place in the world. And she thought about the woman she was now, found, seen, home. The journey between those two versions hadn't been easy. There had been tears and fear and moments of doubt. There had been painful conversations with her family and difficult negotiations of boundaries and expectations. There had been learning curves and adjustment periods and the messy reality of blending lives. But it had been worth it. Every difficult conversation, every scary moment of vulnerability, every risk taken, all of it had been worth it to end up here walking through Boston on Christmas Eve with the people she loved, her gloved hands warm, her heart full, her future bright with possibility. Family wasn't about blood, she'd learned. Family was about who showed up, who stayed, who loved you on your worst days and celebrated you on your best ones, who learned your language instead of expecting you to always translate yourself. Family was a man who made terrible pancakes with unwavering devotion, a little girl with a heart too big for her small body, a sister trying to rebuild what had been broken, a mother finally learning to sign, "I love you." Family was choice and effort and grace. And as snow began to fall, soft and silent, the way Serena experienced all weather, she squeezed Ethan's hand on one side and Lucy's on the other and thought, "I am home. Finally, beautifully, completely home." Lucy looked up at her and signed, "What are you thinking about?" Serena smiled and signed back, "I'm thinking that a year ago I came to this mall alone, and now I'm leaving it with my family." "We're your forever family," Lucy signed with certainty. "Right, Daddy?" "Forever," Ethan signed, looking at Serena with eyes full of love and promise. "Forever," Serena signed back, and as they walked through the snow toward home, toward the small apartment that had become a sanctuary, toward the life they were building together one day at a time, Serena realized that she'd finally found what she'd been searching for all along. Not a family that tolerated her difference, but a family that celebrated it. Not a place where she had to shrink herself to fit, but a place where she could expand to fill all the space she needed. Not a love that asked her to be someone else, but a love that saw exactly who she was and said, "Yes, you, always you." The deaf woman who'd cried alone on Christmas Eve had found her way home, and the single father who'd signed, "Come home with us," had found his way to wholeness. And the little girl who'd tugged her father's sleeve had found the bonus mom she'd been wishing for. They'd all found each other. And in finding each other, they'd found themselves. And that, Serena thought as they climbed the stairs to their third-floor apartment, was the truest kind of Christmas miracle there was. The story ends right there, whole, warm, complete.